dry and calm, 13 or 14 Celsius typically, but one or two spots up to 15 or 16 Celsius. So for bonfire evening, the best of any clear spells will be across northern Scotland. A strengthening breeze out towards the west and some rain coming along later for the Outer Hebrides, but otherwise it's largely dry. Fairly gloomy for the southwest of Scotland, some drizzly showers moving in. And those drizzly showers also affecting North Wales, perhaps parts of Northern Ireland. A lot of cloud across Wales and England. Just a few breaks there into the evening across the southeast, but where we do see some cloud breaks, well, they're likely to fill in with some fog, assisted by the bonfire smoke, of course. And as a result, a gloomy night to come. A lot of low cloud and some fog in places. And by the start of Wednesday, well, it is going to be poor visibility kind of morning for many. Some tricky driving conditions first thing. A mild start though, temperatures in the double figures. And actually northeast Scotland gets off to a colder start, but it's brighter here. Some outbreaks of rain just skirting the far north and northwest of Scotland for a time before it dries up later. And it's a little more breezy out towards the west, but this breeze is coming from the south. That'll help to break up the cloud across North and West Wales, as well as northern Scotland. But for most, it stays grey. Some fog patches in the south could last all day.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could win Christmas on us this year. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Election Day. Our cousins across the pond today decide who the most powerful man or woman in the world will be for the next 4 years. Will it be a President Harris or President Trump? We'll follow the action and bring you the results through the night here on GB News.
We will indeed. And back at home, Kemi Badenoch has assembled her shadow cabinet with places for Robert Jenrick and Priti Patel. Notably, there's no Suella Braverman or Tom Tugendhat on the list.
And they're coming for your cuppa. The National Energy System Operator has warned Brits will have to reduce power consumption at peak times by 2030, all thanks to Ed Miliband's net zero plans. Will traditional British tea time become a thing of the past?
Fancy a midnight tea, Tom? And let's tackle a prince. That was the playful cry of South African children as they played rugby with Prince William in Cape Town. We'll join the future king live in South Africa as he promotes his Global Earthshot Environmental Prize.
Now, we can't ignore the big story that's going to be dominating today. It's going to be dominating all of the newspapers tomorrow. It is an ocean away, but it does affect all of us here in Britain.
Yes, and Tom's very excited. He's going to be helping with all the coverage overnight. I wonder who at home is going to be staying up to find the election results. How motivated are you to find out who is going to be the President of the United States? I imagine some of you will be staying up all night. Others of you may go to sleep, sadly, and wake up in the morning and find out what's going on.
I think the smart people will do a sort of iterative sleep schedule.
Right, OK. How does that
go? And set perhaps an alarm for 2 a.m. Go to sleep early, set an alarm for 2 a.m, check in, see how things are going, and go back to sleep maybe after an hour or so, wake up again at 5. We did know the result in 2016 at about 5:45 GMT.
Oh, really?
So it could be that before breakfast we do know who has won. It could be at midnight, there's a surprise landslide, there's a clear swing. I mean, it's unlikely, given the state of the polls, given everything that we know, it's probably going to be quite exciting. So I do warn you, if you're one of these people who has gone to sleep, woken up at 2, just to check in, just to watch a couple of minutes, you might not be able to take your eyes away.
Yeah, you might not be able to. That'll be you, up for the next day entirely. You may need a siesta, but if you work from home, apparently that's normal.
That's allowed,
anyway, but yes, I can't make sense of all of these different polls that are coming in, you know, showing Kamala Harris 4 percentage points ahead, but then we find out that actually more registered Republican voters have been turning out so far in terms of the early voting too. Everyone's saying it's on a knife edge. I don't know. We'll make sense of it for you.
Absolutely, and don't forget that because there is the Electoral College, because this is about winning states rather than the popular vote, one candidate could win the popular vote, but the other win the presidency. That's happened twice in the last 24 years.
OK, well, let us know if you'll be staying up tonight. gbnews.com/your say, but it's your headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. It's just gone midday. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Some brief breaking news now. An automated system that helps train wheels grip to tracks failed on a train involved in a fatal crash in mid-Wales on the 21st of October, the Rail Accident Investigation Branch has said. 2 Transport for Wales trains collided head-on in Powys on the 21st of October, resulting in the death of 66-year-old David Tudor Evans. 4 other people suffered serious injuries during the incident, and a further 11 sustained injuries requiring hospital treatment. To the US, where Americans are heading to the polls today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats, and 11 state governors. Polls have now opened in several states, including Virginia, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each, according to CNN. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Well, Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up, and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there's no role for Tom Tugendhat, who is a contender in the leadership race. Yesterday, Badenoch's former rival in the Tory leadership race, Robert Jenrick, accepted the role of Shadow Justice Secretary, while the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is the new Shadow Chancellor. And former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier.
Kemi was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
The tobacco and vapes bill will be introduced in Parliament later today, and Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GBNews this morning that the government won't proceed with banning smoking in some outdoor hospitality venues for now. Labour wants to take tougher action to better protect the public, NHS and the economy from the harms of smoking. A ban may be imposed on playgrounds and outside schools. Wes Streeting told Eamon and Isabel there needs to be a balance between benefiting public health and any negatives on people's liberties or on people's livelihoods.
There's no doubt that the hospitality sector has really been through the mill in recent years. The impact of the pandemic, the challenges in the wider economy, the amount of money we've got spare in our pockets. And look, there aren't many advantages to leaks of government discussions, but one of the advantages of this leak was that it's meant we've been able to have a discussion with the hospitality sector, and based on the evidence on the upside risks and the arguments on the downside risks, we've chosen not to proceed with the outdoor hospitality proposal at this time.
And finally for now, the Prince of Wales has met South Africa's president today during his week of engagements in South Africa. William's audience with President Cyril Ramaphosa has been described as a follow-up to the state visit made to the UK by Mr Ramaphosa in 2022. Prince William is in Cape Town ahead of the award ceremony for his Earthshot Prize tomorrow. This morning, the Prince met with young conservationists at a viewpoint to Table Mountain. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 12:08, and just over an hour ago, polls opened across many eastern American states as America votes for their next president.
Yes, so will it be Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? That is the question.
Well, both candidates made their final pitches in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania.
Tomorrow is Election Day. Tomorrow is Election Day. And the momentum is on our side.
We're just one day away. Oh, we've been waiting for this. I've been waiting 4 years for this.
Fascinating the setting of each of those speeches. Yeah. Kamala trying to present a sense of momentum, which certainly had been lost in the last month or so. Donald Trump surrounded by women holding Women for Trump signs. Clearly, he feels that he needs to do more to win over women particularly.
Yes, indeed. Well, new poll data shows Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump by 4%, with that gender gap narrowing as women are fueling Kamala Harris's late poll surge.
But turnout for registered Republicans has been higher than registered Democrats in early voting in a majority of states. Well, in Pennsylvania, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage received a special shout-out from his friend Donald Trump at that rally.
You have a man from Europe, I don't know if he's here, I saw him backstage. What he did was, and what he is doing is sort of what we did a few years ago. He's doing a great job. He's always been my friend for some reason. He liked me, I liked him. And he's shaking it up pretty good over there. He was the big winner of the last election in the UK, and he's a very spectacular man, very highly respected, Nigel Farage. He's a little bit of a rebel, but that's good. You know, that's good. Don't change, Nigel.
Nigel Farage all the way from Europe, eh?
Yeah, I'm not sure he'll be liking being described as European there, but, you know...
You know, like he was blushing a little, Well, got to his feet, of course, waved the hat around.
He could be one of the close friends of the next president. An interesting situation there for the UK, given the battle between our Prime Minister and Donald Trump over that foreign influence scandal, whether or not the Labour Party was being sued by the Trump campaign.
It's all very interesting. Shall we speak to US political journalist Laurie Laird? Laurie, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the show today.
Good afternoon.
It's very, very exciting, isn't it? The world is watching to see who America decides should be their next president. What are you thinking at this moment? Who do you think's going to come out on top?
I mean, forgive me for a second, because I'm still giggling about Nigel Farage being described as a European. It's the funniest thing I've heard all day. Look, anyone who tells you what they think is going to happen in the U.S. election is making it up. It's just too tight to call. I think the Democrats should be, Tom, you mentioned momentum, and I think the Democrats should be slightly concerned that Kamala Harris has not been able to maintain that early momentum she had after she replaced Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, and after that very successful, very stage-managed Democratic convention back in the summer. There was a bit of momentum. She hasn't been able to sustain that. I think Democrats should be slightly concerned about that. I know that Democrats are also a bit concerned about the Republican representation in early voting. Typically, historically, Democrats have been disproportionately likely to vote early. Isn't what we're seeing this time around. And I'm hearing from a number of Democratic activists that this is a concern for them.
Of course, this is the first time the Republicans have had a concerted vote early message for registered Republicans. But perhaps that is behind a little bit of it. But I suppose there is another question, which is, of course, in the United States, when you are a voter, you have to register to vote. You either register as a Republican or as a Democrat or as an independent or one of the minor parties. But just because you've registered as a Republican doesn't necessarily mean that you will have voted Republican, or vice versa. Just because you're registered Democrat doesn't necessarily mean that you'll vote Democrat. And in the past, we have seen some misleading turnout data with regard to that fact.
Absolutely. You make a very good point. And there are a number in that early voting that it looks like more than half of the votes cast will have been cast early. And I think that may not be reflected in polling that we are seeing now. The other thing that I'm very curious about, and I don't hear many people talking about it, and that's the presence of reproductive rights referendums on the ballot in 10 states, 2 of which are swing states. Now, anecdotally, we know that there are a lot of people that are very disaffected by the U.S. political process. And that makes you think that perhaps turnout could be lower than usual. And look, turnout in presidential elections in the U.S. is about 66%. It's much lower than a lot of other established democracies. But sort of compounding this is this presence of abortion rights, reproductive rights on the ballot in 10 states. Does polling accurately reflect people who may be disaffected by the political process, aren't inclined to vote for either presidential candidate, but then may go out to vote for reproductive rights if they're on the ballot in their state? And extending that a little bit, if they choose to vote just on that reproductive rights question, do they get into the polling booth and say, what the heck, I'm here, I'm going to check a box for one of the presidential candidates? Polling has shown that women across America, some men as well, feel very strongly about reproductive rights, much more strongly than they feel about either of the candidates. So I'm not sure if polling reflects those sort of questions. And 2 swing states, Nevada and Arizona, have reproductive rights on the ballot. This could be an interesting wrinkle, something that further sort of fouls the polling picture that we're seeing.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Laurie, we've got our own poll running on our gbnews.com website as to who people would choose to vote if they were American citizen. But I'm just looking at the general polling conducted by YouGov, the well-known polling company. Last month, 64% of British adults would favour Kamala Harris. Only 18% apparently want to see the return of Donald Trump. I mean, if Trump does make it to the White House, he's going to have to, seek better relations, perhaps, or perhaps he doesn't really care what the Brits think.
Well, I mean, you do have Nigel Farage as the Trump whisperer. And there was, you remember when the Labour Party activists were caught doing some work, volunteering for the Harris campaign and the brouhaha that we had a couple of weeks ago, and lots of speculation about whether this could mar the relationship between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump if Donald Trump's elected. I don't think Donald Trump and Keir Starmer ever would have been particular bedfellows. There's not a lot of commonality between the two men. Donald Trump, as much as he likes Nigel Farage, it's going to be a rocky time for Europe. It's going to be a rocky time for anyone who exports goods and services to the U.S. Donald Trump has made absolutely no secret of the fact that he's tariff man, that he says that he wants to impose tariffs of 10, 20, the numbers go up and down, 10, 20, 30% on various imports coming into the U.S. For a small open economy or medium-sized open economy like the U.K., this could be very problematic. And it's peculiar because Donald Trump will say, I'm going to tame inflation, Kamala Harris caused inflation, I'm going to make it all better. And his voters go along with this, or supporters go along with this. Tariffs tend to be inflationary because the price of anything coming into the country is higher. It's not a tax extracted by the government, paid by importers who then pass it on to people who buy these things, consumers. So this could be inflationary. It doesn't seem to deter Donald Trump supporters from voting for the guy, but it could be problematic for anyone who trades with the U.S.
Absolutely, and it's problematic, particularly for the United Kingdom. We have a huge trade relationship with the US, the single largest trade partner of any one country. If there are tariffs slapped on the UK as a result of this general policy, huge issues there. Laurie, we're going to have to leave it there, and we must say that we've been discussing him all programme so far. We will be speaking to Nigel Farage in about 5 minutes' time, so we'll put that European question to him.
I look forward to that.
He's in Pennsylvania, isn't he?
Indeed, yes.
He
Laurie
is
Laird,
indeed.
thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, his ears are probably burning with us talking about him. Anyway, we're going to go to UK politics for a moment because the new Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has gathered her shadow cabinet together for the first time this morning as she confirmed the process of renewing the party had well and truly begun.
Well, the big jobs went to some familiar faces. Dame Priti Patel is the new Shadow Foreign Secretary. Mel Stride is the new Shadow Chancellor, and it was confirmed late this morning that former Home Office Minister Chris Philp will serve as the new Shadow Home Secretary.
But there was no job for leadership candidate Tom Tugendhat, but it remains unclear whether he had himself ruled himself out.
Well, let's get more reaction and cross to our very own political correspondent, Olivia Utley, live in the heart of Westminster for us. Olivia, let's start with that question of Tom Tugendhat. Could it have been that there was some behind-the-scenes back and forth, some tussling overnight?
I think that's almost certainly the case. Kemi Badenoch said that she would offer cabinet positions to everybody who ran to be leader, which of course includes Tom Tugendhat. And yet Tom Tugendhat has not been given a cabinet job and is going to the backbenches. I think we can assume that he was offered some sort of job which he didn't want to accept. Now, that isn't in itself that surprising. Quite often when you've got a small opposition like we're seeing at the moment, and an opposition which doesn't have any chance of coming to power anytime soon, ambitious MPs might prefer to be the chairman of a select committee, for example, where you're scrutinising important government work rather than a junior position in the shadow cabinet. So that is quite likely what happened to Tom Tugendhat. It doesn't make life easy for Kemi Badenoch. She was already facing a very split party. In terms of Conservative members, there was only a 72% turnout that voted for her in the final round of this election. And while MPs were voting in the final round of MP voting, she only picked up about a third of the votes. Generally, it picked up up a third, and James Cleverly too picked up about a third. That's not nearly as decisive a win as even Liz Truss had in 2022, and certainly nothing like what Boris Johnson saw in 2019. So she always had a big task on her plate trying to unite the Conservative Party. The fact that some of these big beasts are now heading to the back benches, including James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat, will probably make life quite difficult for her. I think we can expect to see quite a bit of backseat driving. To make things slightly easier, the threshold at which MPs in the Conservative Party can boot out their leader has been raised. It was just 15% of the parliamentary party had to cast a vote of no confidence, and it would go to a confidence vote. That's now been changed. So that's some scant silver lining for Kemi Badenoch, but it's going to be a really tough time for her uniting that cabinet, not least because all but 6 of her shadow cabinet backed her in this leadership race. She's gone for loyalty over breadth.
Yes, it'll be very interesting to see if Kemi Badenoch lasts till the next general election. We do know how the Tory party are when it comes to knives out, but there you go. She's assembled her shadow cabinet. Thank you, Olivia. We'll have to leave it there. Olivia Utley, our political correspondent there in Westminster Hall.
Well, we must say that after the break, we're going to be talking to Nigel Farage, live from Pennsylvania and fresh from his cameo appearance at that Donald Trump rally last night. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Yeah, it's been claimed that the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall portfolios have generated almost £50 million.
Well, the contracts with public bodies said to include a £37 million agreement with the Ministry of Justice, an £11.4 million deal between Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust. This is what appeared on the programme last night.
Charles and William aren't telling you about their secret millions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for paying your rent every now and then.
Their private estates, the Duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, make Charles and William £50 million a year. But they have repeatedly refused to reveal exactly which properties they own.
Can we have a report on the list of properties?
I don't see why.
I'm not really shocked that they're making money. That's the whole point of them, isn't it?
Morning, and morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a bit news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy, and these properties, portfolios as well. I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 24 minutes past midday over here in London. But of course, in Pennsylvania, it's a little bit earlier in the day. And delighted to be joined there by the Reform Party leader, Nigel Farage. Nigel, thanks for joining us. Early in the morning for you, of course. First of all, got to ask you about that Trump rally last night. Were you expected to be called out by the former president?
No, not at all. I was really quite shocked that suddenly, where's Nigel, stand up and saying nice things. But look, the thing about Trump is if you're a friend of his, you really are a friend of his and he's very loyal to you. So it was very kind of him. I was very flattered and surprised.
Nigel, he called you a European, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he loves Europe. It's just the European Union that he's not very keen on.
Like a lot of people.
Yeah. Now, Nigel, I've got to ask you about this tariff Trump plan. We were talking to Laurie Laird, the commentator, a little bit earlier, and she was talking about some of the risk to the United Kingdom or indeed other countries around the world if Donald Trump were to win and impose these 10 or 20% tariffs to every country around the world. Do you think Britain would get the same treatment?
Well, first things first on tariffs, the European Union, of course, themselves are now putting big tariffs on Chinese cars. So this is not just an American phenomenon. There's a really big fear that if we move towards EVs more, that China will dominate the whole thing. Look, here is the point. Going way back to 2016 and in subsequent conversations, I can promise you that one thing Team Trump have always said to me is they would love to have a free trade deal with the United Kingdom. They believe in free trade, provided that it's fair trade, namely both sides benefit. And I really do believe if Trump wins, there is a big opportunity for the UK. The problem that Keir Starmer's government are going to have is the European Union would be vigorously opposed to it. So what would Starmer do? Would he go with an American deal, which would benefit, us in a big, big way, financial services through to Scottish whiskey or whatever else it may be? Or does he do what Brussels tells him? I genuinely think that despite the tariff regime that Trump wants to bring in, we could be outside of that.
Now, Nigel, I'm sure you've seen that there's been a couple of punchy quotes from you in the Telegraph, at the top of the Telegraph website, possibly on the front page, I don't know. You saying that if Trump loses clear and decisively, then it's time for him to go and play golf, and also that Kamala Harris should pardon Trump once in office to sort of quell any potential unrest.
Yeah. Well, look, let's just get our priorities right. What I told the Telegraph was, I think Trump is going to win. And I must say, being on the ground here, I think the momentum is with him. So be clear, I think Trump is going to win. If he was to lose decisively, well, of course, he will go off and play golf. He's pretty much said that himself already. So I don't see it as really being that outlandish.
OK, and Nigel, I've got to ask you, what are you doing today? You're on the ground in Pennsylvania. Are you knocking on doors or are you sticking with the higher echelons of those involved in Pennsylvania politics?
No, I've been here since before the polls opened. We're on the outskirts of Scranton, which, of course, is Joe Biden's hometown. And I've been talking to voters, both Democrats and Republicans, just trying to get a feel. One thing I will say that's come through from several people, we're in a very middle-class area here. There are a lot more Trump signs on lawns than there were 4 years ago or 8 years ago. He's not quite the bogeyman that he was. Then later on tonight, I'll be down in Florida and I'll be in the ballroom at Mar-a-Lago as the results come in. And I've got everything crossed, but I still believe it'll be a Trump win.
Well, it'll be a fascinating night. I know lots of people this side of the pond are absolutely glued to their televisions all day and all night. Nigel Farage will, of course, catch up with you on the GB News results programme later this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, and apologies, the audio was a little bit dodgy there, but I think we understood absolutely everything that Nigel had to say. He is all the way in Pennsylvania, so forgive us for that.
And, of course, he does have the Wi-Fi password for Mar-a-Lago, so it'll be clearer this evening. But we're across to Downing Street now to talk to our political editor, Christopher Hope. Live, of course, from Downing Street, he's joined by David Davis. Take it away, Chris.
Yes, hi Thomas. Briefly, before I go to David Davis, I've been in the lobby meeting just now with the PM's official spokesman. We're told that Keir Starmer will be following the results carefully and kept updated, and no plans to meet with the National Farmers Union at the moment to discuss the issue of the budget. And also, the Cabinet was briefed more generally about the issue of winter floods, looking particularly at Valencia, and they say that we are prepared for those should they happen. But joining me now is David Davis, the former Conservative Party Brexit Secretary. David Davis, thank you for joining us on GB News. Why are you here in Downing Street?
Well, we're here today. I mean, I and two of my colleagues, Graham Stewart and Charlie Dewhurst from East Yorkshire, to present a petition about the cancellation or the reversal of the winter fuel payments for pensioners, because we've got vast numbers of people in our constituencies who are going to suffer from this. The Labour's own numbers indicate thousands may die in the country as a whole. 750,000 people don't claim the credit, tax credit, which qualifies them, who therefore will suffer. 2.5 million people, we think, will suffer from shortage of fuel, having to choose between fuel or eating. You know, that's not a position a government should put any of our people in.
And the scale of the tax rises last week in that budget, £40 billion. This money saved from the winter fuel allowance is a fraction of that amount of money now.
Tiny. It's only $1 billion. It's only, it's a very, very small fraction, tiny, $1.25 million, I think. So it's terrible from that point of view. I mean, this has had the worst start of any government since 1945, and this budget has just put the cap on it. It's hit everybody: pensioners, farmers, ordinary citizens, you name it.
Well, on the farming issue, you represent a rural constituency. What's your view on the farming situation? There's a dreadful claim in the Commons yesterday about farmers could harm themselves to try and avoid this inheritance tax. I'm sure that isn't the case, but...
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope not. But the simple truth is the government is not telling the truth about it. You know, the average farmer in my constituency will face an inheritance tax. Now, a farmer... People might think they're rich, they've got lots of land, but they haven't got any money because they don't make much money out of farming. That's the way of it, you know. And this policy was put in place, the original policy, the inheritance tax exemption was put in place to keep ordinary family farms in place. It's not a loophole, it's put there for that purpose, and this is destroying.
How worried should the government be about this protest on the 19th of November? Well, it could get quite difficult for the government.
Well, they should be very worried, because not just the protest, but farmers in the community represent a bit more than just farmers. They represent the whole rural community. They're fundamental to it. People supply farms. You know, they go down the local pub, they use the shops, they occupy the, you know, they live in the villages. These are people who we have to care about. They're the backbone of our rural community, and we are breaking that backbone.
And why doesn't this government understand that concern, do you think?
Well, I think it started with them coming in on a dishonest premise. They knew they were going to have to put up taxes. They've come up with this invention of the 22 billion, which everybody now knows is an invention. It's so they can spend more money.
Well, 9.5 billion, of course, at least.
Well, it's not even that. I mean, but the simple truth is all these numbers are in the public domain. There are no secrets in public finance. They knew all of that. They're spending the money on paying their own union groups.
And just finally, Kemi Badenoch, you support her in the leadership campaign. She's appointed her shadow cabinet. You're not in it. I've called it the shallow cabinet, not the shadow cabinet, because lots of big beasts aren't in the actual group.
No, that's cruel and untrue. I mean, I'm supporting her. Let's be clear about this. And I said, she actually said to me last week, you know, I talked to me about shadow cabinet. I said, you don't need me in there. I'm supporting you. I'm going to be on your side. If you need my advice, just ask for it. And that's where we are.
But why aren't big beasts involved? James Cleverly, Jeremy Hunt, big names. It's a shallow cabinet now, isn't it?
I think so. I think, look, I mean, in the case of Hunt and Cleverly, they've been doing really, really heavy-duty jobs for the last several years. They want a bit of a break, and I can understand that. That's understandable. Doesn't mean they aren't going to be in there batting. In you know, when we have budget debates, when we have big debates on the health service, when we have big debates on farming, big debates on every aspect of the economy. They're going to be there batting, as am I.
David Davis, thank you. David Davis there with the defence of the shake-up. The big news here in Westminster is not really in number 10 so much as the shake-up to Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet team announced earlier.
Well, Chris Hope, thanks very much for all of that. Live from Downing Street, where the action is, can always count on our political editor.
Very interesting. David Davis, of course, very scathing of the first few months of the Labour government. Lots to say, particularly about the farms as well.
Yes. But we'll be getting to another issue that is affecting the new government. Of course, a war on tea time. Will people have to restrict when they boil their kettle? All to help Ed Miliband hit his 2030 clean power targets. That after your latest news headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your latest headlines from the newsroom. To the US, where Americans are heading to the polls today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats, and 11 state governors. Polls have now opened in several states, including Virginia, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each, according to CNN. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Well, Donald Trump also spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of...
Well, back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jesse Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there's no role for Tom Tugendhat, who was a contender in the leadership race. Other appointments include Badenoch's former rival Robert Jenrick as Shadow Justice Secretary, Mel Stride as the new Shadow Chancellor, and Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon Isabel earlier.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
And just briefly, an automated system that helps train wheels grip to tracks failed on a train involved in a fatal crash in mid-Wales on the 21st of October, the Rail Accident Investigation Branch has confirmed. 2 Transport for Wales trains collided head-on in Powys on the 21st of October, resulting in the death of 66-year-old David Tudor Evans. 4 other people suffered serious injuries during the incident, and a further 11 sustained injuries requiring hospital treatment. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello again. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's more of the same for most today. It's dry, but grey. There are a few breaks in the cloud, a few more places, perhaps compared to yesterday, seeing sunny spells. The high pressure that's dominating our weather is just drifting away, but the weather fronts are still way out to the west. We've got the breeze coming up from the south, but it's a pretty light wind, and it's still bringing in a lot of cloud. We've seen a few breaks in the cloud already, and a few more likely across parts of eastern England this afternoon. Northern Scotland also doing okay for sunshine. Pretty good looking day actually for the Great Glen up towards Orkney. Some spots of rain in Shetland, bit of drizzly rain too for Northern Ireland this afternoon. But elsewhere, as I said, most places dry, quite misty, quite murky, but temperatures around or actually a touch above average, particularly in the west, 14-15 degrees. Clearer skies across parts of the southeast and generally across eastern England could allow some fog to form overnight. Further west, it's just going to be quite grey through this evening, a bit misty on some hills. As I said, a bit of rain for Northern Ireland in the east initially, and then a few showers coming into the west. Some of that rain then working into southwest Scotland this evening, but again, it should be pretty light. Much of the northeast of Scotland dry and clear. and that's where we'll see the lowest temperatures as we go through the night. Still some drizzly rain across parts of Shetland, and through the night the winds will pick up across western Scotland with a bit more rain just coming in here. Again, nothing too heavy. Most of England, Wales, Northern Ireland having a dry night, misty, murky conditions over hills, and as I said, some thicker fog patches are possible over parts of eastern England, particularly after bonfires tonight. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but many towns and cities staying in double digits. Another pretty mild start to Wednesday. And guess what? Tomorrow, another mostly cloudy but mostly dry day. A bit more in the way of showery rain over northwest Scotland initially, some showers in southern Scotland, maybe a bit more brightness tomorrow for North Wales and northern England, and again parts of northern Scotland doing okay for sunshine. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Northbound on the M66, all traffic is being temporarily held due to an incident at junction 2 for Bury. Eastbound on the M4, it is slow to an earlier broken down vehicle at junction 8 for Maidenhead. Delays as a result, even though all lanes have reopened. It has cleared though for the M4 into town for London to an area obstruction on the road at Brentford junction 2. It is queuing for the clockwise side of the M25, a lane closure to a broken down lorry before Watford at 19. It is causing delays on the opposite direction to onlookers. And finally, the northbound side of the M3 entry slip road is partially blocked at Winchester services. That is due to a broken down vehicle, though traffic is nicely on the move. So across the UK, you're up to date with your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, it's 12:40. Fancy a cuppa, Tom?
Oh, I don't mind if I do.
Well, Ed Miliband might have something to say about that, Tom.
Really?
Yeah, a new report today reveals that people will have to restrict when they boil the kettle, or perhaps when they choose to wash their clothes, to help him reach his 2030 clean energy targets, don't you know?
Well, this is all due to an investigation by the National Energy System Operator. It claims that to stay on track with Labour's Clean Power Plan, households and businesses must reduce power usage at peak times, not just by a little bit, but by sixfold.
Sixfold, OK. Well, Lord Frost has already voiced his concerns on X. He's warned the public, get ready to sacrifice your living standards for the sake of Ed Miliband's 5-year plan. OK, well...
For more on this, we're joined by the Director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montiford. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Clearly, we're undergoing a huge transition in a very short space of time. In your view, is it feasible?
No, this is absolutely for the birds. There is absolutely no way that this can be delivered by 2030. It's extremely unlikely it can be delivered by 2050. Ed Miliband is a fanatic, and he's saying these things. And I think National Grid know which side their bread is buttered on, so they're kind of going along with it. But if you actually read through the detail of their report, it's not nearly as supportive of Ed Miliband as perhaps the headlines have made out. It actually suggests that even if you take into account the cost of global warming, that we would be better off not doing this. The system costs are less doing nothing than going ahead with this absolutely crazy project. So rationally, we would say stop here. But of course, that's not going to happen. The costs that people are going to have to bear are frightening. I mean, the report suggests £40 billion a year, so that's £1,300 per household. And that's just for the energy system. I mean, all the rest of net zero, which Mr. Miliband wants to do as well, that's going to be probably 4 times as much. So we're talking £5,000, £6,000 per household per year. I mean, this is impossible. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, OK, you may have to use less power at times, so don't cook at a peak time or, don't do your washing at a peak time. We may suffer higher bills. In the short term, though, the ambition is that they all come down if we invest in all this green tech. We'll see a few more wind farms and solar panels. We may have to move to heat pumps instead of our gas heating. There may be some power blackouts during this transition, but we'll get there in the end. And there will be some new green jobs as well to look forward to, Andrew. It's not all bad.
Blackouts are blackout here and there. I mean, yes, it doesn't really matter, does it? No, I mean, it is quite frightening. I mean, it's scary what's going on at the moment. We have no wind at the moment and pretty much no sun either. So, and electricity prices are soaring. It's not clear whether we are actually going to be forced not to boil kettles or have a shower in the evening, but it may just be that it becomes unaffordable to do so. There's a lot that we haven't been told yet, and I don't think anybody actually really knows. What they are telling us is that
Andrew, energy companies actually are already encouraging. Sorry to interrupt, but some energy companies are already sort of writing to people saying you can save a bit of cash if you don't use your electricity at this time and that. So could it just be a sort of that more people adopt that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I don't know, if you were paid, a few, a pound or something, would you be willing to sit there in the dark or I mean, it's kind of hard.
Andrew, are you ignoring one of the big changes that's happening across many households on the country? People who have installed their own solar powers and indeed their own batteries in their homes. Could it be that actually, in a fairly short amount of time, it might be much, much more standard for every home to come with its own battery? You then can use your own electricity whenever you want, because you take it on from the grid when it's cheap and use it at your convenience.
OK, so at the moment, as I said, there's no wind and there's no sun. And the weather forecast is suggesting it will continue like that probably for 10 days. Now, what the size of battery you'd need to deal with that is absolutely enormous. In reality, the kind of battery you put in your house lasts a few hours. So if you didn't have a grid connection as well, you would be absolutely stuffed. After 24 hours, you would be sitting there in the dark with literally nothing. So you need to keep your grid connection. Now, the problem is with that, if you use your battery the rest of the time, then the electricity that comes down the grid to you is going to be much more expensive, because all that cost is not going to be used very much. It's only going to be used at times when the wind isn't blowing. And the costs of everything goes up. You've got to remember also, those batteries and solar panels are not cheap. This is not a cheap way of running your house.
No, and a lot of people have only got them because they had lots of grants going, haven't they, in the last decade or so. Andrew Munford...
And they like virtue signalling is the other thing. It's
well, I'm not sure my aunt and uncle like virtue signalling. I think they just thought it might help them a bit.
Save a few pennies.
Andrew Munford, thank you very much, Director of Net Zero Watch. Always great to have you on. Thank you. Norfolk Sky says it's antisocial to run your washing machine at night if you have neighbours. It's dangerous to go to bed while your dishwasher runs overnight in case there's a fire. He says, I refuse to take part in energy companies' scams of free electricity, etc.
I do think that. I mean, if you look at energy demand in the UK, you get these weird peaks. I mean, it's so high and so low. I mean, if we have more batteries in more homes, if we sort of squash that sombrero, there's a more constant level of energy demand. I think we can avoid blackouts.
I'm not against that.
That's the hopeful future.
I'm not against that in a kind of, free way, but not in a sort of authoritarian, stop boiling your kettle for England type thing.
Yeah.
Or for the UK.
Well, we've got to say that voting is underway in the United States as we speak. There are live pictures here from New Hampshire in New England. Of course, New Hampshire had the first town to declare its results at midnight US time, at 5 a.m. our time. That town was split 50-50. Is that how the rest of the country will go? Well, this is live footage here inside a polling station where we can see real New Hampshire voters casting their votes. They'd never allow this in the United Kingdom.
Oh, I wonder how they're voting. Look, we're so close. We're so close. Can you take a little sneak peek? No, we can't quite. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. The Prince of Wales, he's continuing his trip in South Africa, meeting with their president later today. We're going to catch up with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who'll be joining us live from Cape Town. There's Prince William having a kickabout.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Suchet's relationship with the great composer. as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Suchet.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music, as you say, I play the trombone, in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 to 1, and on a very international show today, the Prince of Wales has met with South Africa's president as he continues a week of events in Cape Town focused on the environment.
Yes, this morning the Prince walked up to a viewpoint overlooking Table Mountain, telling young conservationists they are going to change the world.
Well, he'll also be joined by Foreign Secretary David Lammy for a meeting with South African Foreign Minister Ronald Lamola.
Well, GB News World correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now live from Cape Town. A busy schedule for Prince William.
Yeah, it certainly is, Emily, and I think today is all about his passions as well as his duty with diplomacy. So early this morning, Prince William was up and about, and so were we, because obviously we had to cover it, going to the Table Mountain National Park to Signal Point, which is this beautiful kind of outstanding area of natural beauty where you can see Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 18 years, as well as, of course, the iconic Table Mountain. But the area has a huge biodiversity, including animals, rare animals and rare plants, and it's a big task trying to conserve all of that for future generations. So Prince William was meeting a number of those young conservationists who are all volunteers and seeing the work they do to preserve it for the next generation, as well as being joined by the crocodile hunter's son, Robert Irwin, as well. So he was very impassioned by that. But just in the last hour or so, Prince William has had a very high-level meeting with the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, alongside the Foreign Secretary David Lammy, who is also in South Africa accompanying Prince William and his South African counterpart as well. So it appears that the new government is still very much seeing Prince William and the royal family as an asset when it comes to international and diplomatic relations. And I do have some information of what exactly was discussed in that meeting. So the Prince thanked the President for his support with the the Earthshot Prize being hosted tomorrow by Prince William in South Africa. That's Prince William's Environmental Prize, trying to find solutions to repair the planet. He also talks about the fact of the warm welcome that he received when he was in South Africa and his visit to Ocean View School yesterday, where he was quite literally tackled by a load of children on a rugby pitch. That's an initiative to try and tackle child poverty in and around Cape Town and other areas of the world as too by using rugby. But also the British High Commissioner has been talking to us here on GB News and saying the royal family's diplomatic role is very much the highest level of engagement, and that will be followed up by government ministers in other meetings.
Well, Cameron Walker, thank you very much for that comprehensive report. We'll be catching up with you, of course, later in the programme. A busy day of events for the Prince.
Cameron gets to travel the world, doesn't he?
He does indeed.
Seeing what the royals are doing. He looks beautiful in Cape Town. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, it is voting time in the United States of America. Here are live pictures from New Hampshire as people decide who they're going to vote for.
It's fascinating that they let these cameras inside polling stations so that we, on the other side of the ocean, can see people mark their ballots live as they vote. I mean, absolutely fascinating insight there into the democratic process in the United States. We'll have much more, of course, on the US election throughout the course of this programme. But, of course, we also have a look at the weather here in Blighty too.
Chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's more of the same for most today. It's dry, but grey. There are a few breaks in the cloud, a few more places, perhaps compared to yesterday, seeing sunny spells. The high pressure that's dominating our weather is just drifting away, but the weather fronts are still way out to the west. We've got the breeze coming up from the south, but it's a pretty light wind, and it's still bringing in a lot of cloud. We've seen a few breaks in the cloud already and a few more likely across parts of eastern England this afternoon. Northern Scotland also doing okay for sunshine. Pretty good looking day actually for the Great Glen up towards Orkney. Some spots of rain in Shetland, bit of drizzly rain too for Northern Ireland this afternoon, but elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. Quite misty, quite murky, but temperatures around or actually a touch above average, particularly in the west, 14, 15 degrees. Clearer skies across parts of the southeast and generally across eastern England could allow some fog to form overnight. Further west, it's just going to be quite grey through this evening, a bit misty on some hills. As I said, a bit of rain for Northern Ireland in the east initially, and then a few showers coming into the west. Some of that rain then working into southwest Scotland this evening, but again, it should be pretty light. Much of the northeast of Scotland dry and clear, and that's where we'll see the lowest temperatures as we go through the night. Still some drizzly rain across parts of Shetland, and through the night the winds will pick up across western Scotland with a bit more rain just coming in here. Again, nothing too heavy. Most of England, Wales, Northern Ireland having a dry night, misty, murky conditions over hills, and as I said, some thicker fog patches are possible over parts of eastern England, particularly after bonfires tonight. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but many towns and cities staying in double digits. Another pretty mild start to Wednesday. And guess what? Tomorrow, another mostly cloudy but mostly dry day. A bit more in the way of showery rain over northwest Scotland initially, some showers in southern Scotland, maybe a bit more brightness tomorrow for North Wales and northern England, and again parts of northern Scotland doing okay for sunshine. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed.
We're giving you the chance to win everything you need to celebrate the festivities. There's £20,000 and £25 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of November. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Election day. Our cousins across the pond decide who the most powerful man or woman in the world will be for the next 4 years. Will it be a President Harris or President Trump? We'll follow the action and bring you the results through the night here on GB News.
And back at home, Kemi Badenoch has assembled her shadow cabinet. Or is it a shallow cabinet, as some critics have said? There are places for Robert Jenrick and Priti Patel, but notably, no Suella Braverman or Tom Tugendhat are on the list.
And firework fiasco. Now, following violent disorder in Edinburgh, Scotland's first ever firework control zones come into force. You're not allowed to fire those fireworks into the air.
Now, one town has become a fairly talked-upon moment in this election campaign for perhaps all of the wrong reasons. Springfield, Ohio, has had a high degree of Haitian immigration, and people will remember, in the one televised debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, this is the town that Donald Trump alleged people were eating cats and eating dogs within. Well, now we can see people not eating cats and dogs, but instead going to vote.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating your pets. Is that what he said?
That is pretty much the lot of it. And this was, I think there was one legitimate report of someone being concerned that some illegal immigrants were eating geese. Which I think then sort of spiralled into people are eating cats and dogs and all the rest of it, and it became a big viral moment. But Ohio used to be a swing state. It, of course, went for Obama, but swung to Trump in 2016. It, of course, stayed with Trump in 2020 as well. It's not seen as a swing state this time round, but historically has been. It is, of course, the home state of Donald Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. He's a senator for Ohio, and they'll be hoping, well, if Donald Trump doesn't win this state this evening, something has gone very, very badly wrong for his campaign, then it is not a close race at all.
Any link to the Simpsons? Springfield?
Springfield in The Simpsons doesn't actually have a home state. We're led to believe it's
an anywhere town.
Yes, it's sort of an anywhere town, but it's not sort of... I don't think, unless it's... Is it in Illinois? No, I don't think it is. I think it's an entirely fictitious place. But we'll get you all of the news on that.
There are so many towns in the United States that you could think you've made up a new town name, and you haven't.
There certainly isn't a Springfield, as far as I'm aware, that has a nuclear power station.
OK, OK, well, there you go. It's not all true what you see on the telly. GBNews.com/your say, do let us know if you're going to be staying up all night to watch the coverage that is going to star Tom Harwood, as well as Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello. But it's your headlines now with Katie.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the newsroom. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next president of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, including Virginia, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Natch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each, according to CNN. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Well, Donald Trump also spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jesse Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there's no role for Tom Tugendhat, who is a contender in the leadership race. Yesterday, Badenoch's former rival in the Tory leadership race, Robert Jenrick, accepted the role of Shadow Justice Secretary, while the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is the new Shadow Chancellor. And former Home Secretary Priti Patel has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
Some brief breaking news now. An automated system that helps train wheels grip to tracks failed on a train involved in a fatal crash in mid-Wales on the 21st of October, the Rail Accident Investigation Branch has said. 2 Transport for Wales trains collided head-on in Powys on the 21st of October, resulting in the death of 66-year-old David Tudor Evans. 4 other people suffered serious injuries during the incident, and a further 11 sustained injuries requiring hospital treatment. The tobacco and vapes bill will be introduced in Parliament today, and Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GB News this morning that the government won't proceed with banning smoking in some outdoor hospitality venues for now. Labour wants to take tougher action to better protect the public, NHS and the economy from the harms of smoking. A ban may be imposed in playgrounds and outside schools. Wes Streeting told Eamon and Isabel there needs to be a difference between balancing public health and negatives on people's liberties or on their livelihoods.
There's no doubt that the hospitality sector has really been through the mill in recent years. The impact of the pandemic, the challenges in the wider economy, the amount of money we've got spare in our pockets. And look, there aren't many advantages to leaks of government discussions, but one of the advantages of this leak was that it's meant we've been able to have a discussion with the hospitality sector And based on the evidence on the upside risks and the arguments on the downside risks, we've chosen not to proceed with the outdoor hospitality proposal at this time.
And finally, the Prince of Wales has met South Africa's president today during his week of engagements in South Africa. William's audience with President Cyril Ramaphosa has been described as a follow-up to the state visit made to the UK by Mr Ramaphosa in 2022. Prince William is in Cape Town ahead of the award ceremony for his Earthshot Prize tomorrow. This morning, the Prince met with young conservationists at a viewpoint to Table Mountain. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past 1, and currently polls are open as America votes for their very next president.
So, will it be Donald Trump or will it be Kamala Harris? What's your bet?
It's such... I haven't... You know what? I did actually bet on the last one.
Oh, the last one?
Yeah, I bet on Joe Biden, and I won. I haven't bet on this one. I'm not confident enough either way to put any money on any outcome.
I bet on Trump and Brexit, and I won them both. It was a good day for my bank account, anyway. You can decide whether it was a good day for the country.
Fair dues. Well, both of the candidates have made their final pitches in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania.
Tomorrow is election day. Tomorrow is election day. And the momentum is on our side.
We're just one day away. Oh, we've been waiting for this. I've been waiting 4 years for this.
Well, new polling data shows Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump by 4%, although, of course, that national polling difference might not matter in those crucial swing states. The gender gap is also a very important thing to note. Of course, more women are leaning Kamala than Trump. Could that fuel a late Kamala Harris poll surge?
And that's probably why Donald Trump was standing in front of all of those placards saying women for Trump to try and get some more female voters out. But yes, turnout for registered Republicans has, though, been higher than for registered Democrats, and that's in early voting in a majority of states. So it's a complicated picture.
Absolutely, and potentially all to play for. But let's try and get the lowdown now with the former Chief of Staff to Joe Biden, Susan Platt. Susan, thanks so much for joining us. This is, of course, such a knife-edge moment. Are we over-egging just how much of a knife edge this election is on?
Good afternoon. No, it's been exhausting. I'm putting toothpicks in my eyes to keep them open and eating chocolate-covered espresso beans. But I think what you're going to see today is a massive, massive vote of women across this country. Kamala Harris not only will be the first woman president out of 46 ahead of her, but we have the opportunity with her to regain our rights and to finally have a seat at the table. You know, the old saying is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. Well, it's about time women say, we have a seat at the table. And I really do believe, that women are going to vote. We saw this. Women have already voted 55%, much higher than men. I think it's going to be tight in some places, but I think we're going to be surprised in a few places. It's been incredible what Kamala Harris has done in 107 days. She has had to introduce herself to the country as the person running to be president and also engage in a ground game on how to get elected. And I will tell you this, if I were betting today, and I'm not going to say I'm betting the farm, but if I were, I would say Kamala Harris has the edge because she has the momentum, she has the enthusiasm, and that matters. And if you saw the disparate rallies last night, I think everybody's going to choose hope and coming together over fear and demonization of Donald Trump.
Is there a danger, though, for Kamala that she's pushed the sort of women for Kamala maybe too hard? That perhaps men have been put off, that her campaign seems to be all about women? You know, there are men as well.
Well, we've had that a long time on the side of men. I think it's about time we stand up and fight for ourselves, and we fight for our families, and men fight with us. You know, I was there on the ellipse last Tuesday when Kamala Harris gave her speech. What a symbolism and what a coming together. There were men, women, children, people of all color, faiths, and creeds that came together, and they all it was an incredible moment in history. They all just said enough. it's time that we not only change the page, but change the chapter.
Now, of course, there are 7 key swing states that are likely to be the only states to really watch tonight as the ones that will flip this election one way or the other, given how entrenched most voters are in the United States. In 2 of those 7 swing states, it's not just the presidential and the local and the congressional elections that are going on, but also referendums on access to abortion rights. So in Nevada and Arizona, that is also on the ballot. Susan, do you think that that is going to have a material impact on how those 2 states vote?
I do think it is. And in other states, there are other issues on the ballot as well, even in Florida, which no way do I think we're going to win Florida, but that's on the ballot in Florida as well. So I think what we're going to see, and what I'm going to be looking for is I'm going to be looking at Iowa, since we just had that poll from Ann Seltzer in the Des Moines Register a couple days ago, which showed Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump by 2 or 3 points. And that poll is almost always spot on. I want to see if that kind of, if the influx of that goes towards the rest of the Midwest and what happens in Pennsylvania, my home state. I'm going to be watching a couple counties there very closely and see what happens. And one other side I'm going to watch is Texas. Again, I don't think we're going to win Texas, but boy, if we could take out Ted Cruz, that would be a major win for me.
That is, of course, a really interesting point. The Senate elections are also a big deal here. Most independent analysts suggest that the Senate is really the Republicans to lose. There's the West Virginia senator standing down a Democrat. It seems almost certain that the Republicans will pick up a seat there. But are you really suggesting that Texas, the senator for Texas, Ted Cruz, his seat is in play?
Well, they say it is. And the movement, as I said earlier, is going in our direction. In Montana, a lot of Democrats had kind of figured that we were going to lose that race, John Tester's seat. But all of a sudden, now it's really back in play and tied, and I think he may be ahead by 1. So strange things can happen. There's always going to be an outlier somewhere. The question is, where's it going to be?
Yeah, do you think the Kamala campaign has been honest about Trump's position on abortion? I mean, if you ask the average woman, they think Donald Trump wants to ban abortion in its entirety across all states. That's not true, though, is it, Susan?
Well, he's the one that appointed all the Supreme Court justices, which revoked a woman's right that we've had for the last 50 years. And I think women have had enough. And not just women, but the men who love them. And so Donald Trump claims that he was the one that did it. So what can you say?
And Susan, why do you think so many people will go out there and vote for Donald Trump then?
No, that's a good question. And I'm not sure that we'll know that. History will probably tell us more about it. They're all good people. They all have their beliefs. I'm sometimes surprised that they actually believe him and no one else. But, you know, as I mentioned the Iowa poll, there's a lot of evangelical Christians in Iowa. And I think that his rallies of the last week have really, it's gotten so dark and so depressing, and he's gotten really kind of obnoxious.
Susan,
I think it's turned off a whole lot of
could
people.
it not be though that their priorities are perhaps illegal immigration or perhaps the economy, and they may not like some of the things Donald Trump says, but actually they think they may end up with more money in their pocket, or he may well be better at dealing with the border, and they're worried about security and safety on that front? I mean, there are so many different reasons, aren't there, that someone would vote Donald Trump?
Clearly there are, but clearly there are a lot more reasons, I believe, to vote for Kamala Harris and change the direction of this country. We have a democracy. We have freedom. We want to maintain that. And Donald Trump is talking about taking away more and more rights of folks. I don't think Americans want to accept that for the most part, the majority.
Well, goodness me, Susan Platt, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through what is an exciting election, pretty much for everyone around the world. Former Chief of Staff to Joe Biden there, Susan Platt. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it just seems to me that the only reason people are saying to vote Kamala is that she's not Donald Trump and that she's pro-reproductive rights choice. Is that it? Is that it?
The crucial thing about the Dobbs decision...
That's not important.
That the Supreme Court decided that reversed Roe versus Wade. is it didn't ban abortion across the United States. It allowed different states to set different policies. And there have been some surprises. Ohio, we've been talking about it earlier, Ohio actually rejected an abortion ban. Which took many people by surprise. Fairly conservative state. Different states are deciding different policies. I think it's unfair to correlate that argument with the argument that the decision banned abortion in its entirety.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of lies and propaganda going around on both sides. Women are being told across America that if Donald Trump gets in, they'll have a dictator for life and they won't be able to have control over their bodies anywhere they are in the entirety of the United States. I don't know.
Well, shall we bring it back to Blighty now?
Go on then,
because
go on then.
The new Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, has gathered her shadow cabinet for the first time this morning as she confirmed the process of renewing the party has well and truly begun.
Yes, the big jobs went to some familiar faces. Dame Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary, Mel Stride as Shadow Chancellor. And it was confirmed late this morning that former Home Office Minister Chris Philp will serve as the new Shadow Home Secretary.
Well, there was no job for the leadership candidate Tom Tugendhat, but it remains unclear whether he has ruled himself out. Also, Suella Braverman, another name who was not in that top team. For more reaction, let's cross to our very own political correspondent, Catherine Forster, live in the heart of Westminster for us. Catherine, let's start with that Tom Tugendhat question. Do you reckon he turned down a job?
All a bit of a mystery, actually. His team have gone very, very quiet. What we are hearing, though not directly from Tom himself, is that he was in fact offered a position in Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet, but turned it down. So he is the only one of the Tory leadership candidates not with a position, apart, of course, from James Cleverly, who had ruled himself out already. I think it is significant that Mel Stride is the Shadow Chancellor. Obviously, he ran for the leadership along with Priti Patel, who is now the Shadow Foreign Secretary, and they come from sort of opposite sides of the party, if you like. Priti Patel, a big figure, huge supporter of Boris Johnson, seen as being on the right. Mel Stride, Treasury experience, previous work and pensions secretary, much more a one nation Tory. So Kemi Badenoch potentially trying to sort of build some bridges and offer something for everybody. But beyond that, I think she has done what leaders tend to do, which is stuff the cabinet with her own supporters. I think about 15 of them had come out in support of her. There's a handful that hadn't outwardly supported anybody, and a handful too that had supported Robert Jenrick, Victoria Atkins, one of those, Ed Argar, another one, Neil O'Brien. But interesting, isn't it, that Robert Jenrick, who got to the last two and was defeated, but not by a huge margin, is now Shadow Justice Secretary because, of course, his main policy difference with Kemi Badenoch was that he was saying we have to pull out of the ECHR. Kemi Badenoch's position on that much more nuanced, shall we say. And some of these people, I think, won't be known to many people at home. Chris Philp, for instance, a big job for him. He is now the Shadow Home Secretary. He was former policing minister. He's been a huge supporter of Kemi Badenoch. I remember back at Conservative conference up in Birmingham, after all the candidates gave their speeches to the membership, they'd come out, they'd talk to the press, all except, that is, Kemi Badenoch, who isn't always terribly keen to talk to the press, but there was Chris Philp coming out to talk on her behalf, even as I kept saying, where is Kemi, where is Kemi? So loyalty rewarded, but can they unite around her? I think that's a very big question. They are in a terribly deep hole, but, you know, there are already rumblings behind the scenes, mutterings of people saying, well, she won't be leader by the next general election anyway. She's only going to be in place for a little while. And then the feeling amongst some is they'll get rid of her, put somebody else in charge.
Well, Catherine Forster, thank you very much for that update live in Westminster Hall.
We had a little look at Robert Jenrick in his first day on the job.
We did.
He was He was asking questions, wasn't he, as the Shadow Justice Secretary about the early release scheme, wasn't it? He was trying to hold them to account on that front.
Absolutely, although it has to be said the Shadow Safeguarding Minister was really batting him back, saying it was all your government's fault. So, tit for tat.
It was very much tit for tat, wasn't it? We do have some news, though, just to bring you very quickly. This is some royal news. Buckingham Palace has announced in the last few minutes that the Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has withdrawn from her engagements this week. So we're hoping to speak to Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent, very soon to find out a little bit more about that. So, yes, a chest infection the Queen has, so she'll not be doing her engagements this week.
And all of us at GB News send Queen Camilla our very best wishes, of course. But plenty more coming up in today's programme, including more fury from farmers. We'll be live on a farm to tell you more.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 26 minutes past 1, and farmers are threatening to stop spreading their sludge on their land in protest at plans to impose inheritance tax on their estates.
Yes, the president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, met yesterday with the Environment Secretary to voice farmers' fury. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
We fully dispute the figures that Treasury have been using. We've played back DEFRA's own figures. So the Treasury is saying only 27% of farms will be within scope of these changes. DEFRA's own figures suggest that 2/3 of farms will be within scope. How they can have that wider discrepancy within government is quite unbelievable. So, I mean, there's certainly no resolution today. We've made very passionately our perspective clear that this tax change is completely unfair. It had been ruled out by the Secretary of State in the run-up to the election. And now there are many, many family farms right the way across the United Kingdom that are worried for their future.
Well, that was the president of the National Farmers Union there.
They feel blindsided by this, don't they?
They really do.
If it was ruled out prior to the election and then it suddenly appears in the budget.
Dishonest, isn't it? But around a third of farmers in Northern Ireland are set to be affected by these new measures announced in the budget, with the Stormont Agriculture Minister confirming those numbers today.
Yes, other reports suggest around 2/3 of UK farms could be affected by this. Shall we speak to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, who joins us live from County Down? Doogie, there's a headline suggesting that farmers are going to take things into their own hands, some kind of militant action. There is fury across the farming community, isn't there?
Well, there is. I have never seen them so angry, Emily. And I mean, to stop spreading slurry means that those slurry tanks will bust. They will go into the rivers, the shucks, the drains out around the countryside and do more environmental damage. And really why they're going that direction, Emily, is the farms have had so much environmental legislation forced on them, not by Labour, but by the former government, the Tories. I mean, they've been attacked over their methane output. They've been told that they have to cut back on how much slurry they spread. And the greening of land, I mean, Labour has, in Wales, 20% of your land has to be put into greening. And of course, what used to be called the single farm payment is now dependent on how much greening you will do in and around your farm. And that means that agricultural land is coming out of use and it's costing the farms money. But they have played the game. They have been virtuous. They have stood by what they were being told, and they have played the game, although it's cost them a lot of money. And now they're saying, hold on, we can't be told to go one way and come back the other way. And farms like this one in particular, I mean, last week I was in a dairy farm, Anna Riley was in a pig farm, yesterday Will Hollis was in an arable farm. This farm is vastly undervalued. I mean, the minister yesterday in Northern Ireland said 1/3 of farms, and then he said 75% of that third would be in the dairy sector. That's where the public sector is getting this wrong. They're valuing land as the asset on the farm. If you look at the likes of this place here, it has massive amounts of greenhouses. It is a primary grower. In behind me now is cauliflower seed growing, lettuces, cucumbers, etc., and they're all being ready to be put into the field, and it's costing them an extremely large amount of money. And earlier on I spoke with the owner of this particular farm, Trevor Gabby, and this is what he had to say. Well, you're a propagator of plants, isn't that correct?
That's correct. We grow in excess of 60 million plants for the island of Ireland. So we grow seedlings, we seed, and we grow into seedlings, we then sell them to throughout Ireland. This in turn, then the farmers grow them into your cauliflowers, your broccoli, your Brussels sprouts. So we work on a very small margin, so we have to do numbers, like a lot of other farms. But what's killing us here at the minute is the wages.
And I mean, the Chancellor very much put up minimum wage and then hit you with national insurance. How's that going to affect you with employment?
Well, we were put up last year by over 10%. We're hit by 6.7% this year. That's an awful rise. So we put an increase of about 4% on our plants last year, but they're going to take a massive rise this year because basically that 4% wasn't enough. It's going to get a rise again. So what's going to happen is my price of plants, we plants out here, they're going to go up in price because we have to pay our bills, so we have to increase our prices. So the guy then grows his cabbage, and then he's going to have to look for more money from his processor, from his wholesaler or supermarket because his prices rise. So you're going to look at inflation. So what they've done is they've just increased inflation.
Oh, well, you could see from that, Tom, how actually.
Lost the sound there from Doogie Beattie, but we got the gist of the report there, and I think the real particular concern there is this 1/3 versus 2/3 discrepancy. The government in Northern Ireland saying, or rather the executive in Northern Ireland saying there, that only 1/3 of farms will be affected by this. But Doogie saying very clearly, are they measuring all of the assets of that farm? Could it be many, many more farms that are actually whacked by this tax?
Yeah, I'm not surprised the farmers want to demonstrate a way in which they are simply needed. Just demonstrate that in a big way to the government to try and get them to U-turn on this. But we'll be following every twist and turn on this. We know the president of the National Farmers Union has got a tough task on his hands, that's for sure.
Absolutely. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come on today's programme, including polls are open in the United States. This is New Hampshire that we can see on our screens now. Real-life Americans casting their real-life ballots live here on the television. Amazing.
Oh, it's exciting.
Amazing what modern technology can show you, isn't it? Those are people casting their votes as we speak. Well, we're going to have much more on that after your latest news updates with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your latest headlines from the newsroom. Some breaking news this lunchtime. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has withdrawn from her engagements this week, Buckingham Palace has announced. A statement from Buckingham Palace says Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with the chest infection, for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. We'll bring you more on that as we have it. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats, and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, including Virginia, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each, according to CNN. While both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
Donald Trump also spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Well, back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet this morning. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there's no role for Tom Tugendhat, who was a contender in the leadership race. Other appointments include Badenoch's former rival Robert Jenrick as Shadow Justice Secretary, Mel Stride as the new Shadow Chancellor, and Priti Patel as Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for your finance report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2983 and €1.1915. The price of gold is £2,108.75 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,174 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello again. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's more of the same. For most today, it's dry but grey. There are a few breaks in the cloud, a few more places, perhaps compared to yesterday, seeing sunny spells. The high pressure that's dominating our weather is just drifting away, but the weather fronts are still way out to the west. We've got the breeze coming up from the south, but it's a pretty light wind, and it's still bringing in a lot of cloud. We've seen a few breaks in the cloud already and a few more likely across parts of eastern England this afternoon. Northern Scotland also doing okay for sunshine. Pretty good looking day actually for the Great Glen up towards Orkney. Some spots of rain in Shetland, bit of drizzly rain too for Northern Ireland this afternoon. But elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. Quite misty, quite murky, but temperatures around or actually a touch above average, particularly in the west, 14, 15 degrees. Clearer skies across parts of the southeast and generally across eastern England could allow some fog to form overnight. Further west, it's just going to be quite grey through this evening, a bit misty on some hills. As I said, a bit of rain for Northern Ireland in the east initially, and then a few showers coming into the west. Some of that rain then working into southwest Scotland this evening, but again, it should be pretty light. Much of the northeast of Scotland dry and clear. And that's where we'll see the lowest temperatures as we go through the night. Still some drizzly rain across parts of Shetland. And through the night, the winds will pick up across western Scotland with a bit more rain just coming in here. Again, nothing too heavy. Most of England, Wales, Northern Ireland having a dry night. Misty, murky conditions over hills. And as I said, some thicker fog patches are possible over parts of eastern England, particularly after bonfires tonight. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but many towns and cities staying in double digits. Another pretty mild start to Wednesday. And guess what? Tomorrow, another mostly cloudy but mostly dry day. A bit more in the way of showery rain over northwest Scotland initially, some showers in southern Scotland, maybe a bit more brightness tomorrow for North Wales and northern England, and again parts of northern Scotland doing okay for sunshine. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, hello to you, I'm Jules Buckley, South Yorkshire firstly, and delays on the northbound M1, junction 32 to 33, that's from the M18 up towards Catcliffe, Sheffield and Rotherham. A collision there means delays, a lane closure in place. Looking slow on the southbound M66 around the turn for Ramsbottom junction 1, a lane shut there at the scene of a collision, still causing queues. Eastbound M4, Slough West at junction 7 towards Slough and Windsor at junction 6, all the traffic at the moment being held is to deal with a broken down car, so queues building minute by minute, and a lane shut at the moment on the clockwise M25 just before Watford at 19. Lane 1 of 4's combed off. There's a broken down lorry. Queues back before Maple Cross at 17 and also causing queues anti-clock as well.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 20 to 2, and a Conservative peer has been urged to withdraw from a controversial parliamentary group after it hosted a conference with a politician from a party that was linked with calls for racist violence.
OK, let's break this down. Ed Vaizey, the former culture minister, is an officer on the Afrikaner Reparations Group, which hosted its conference last month. Now, this comes as Foreign Secretary David Lammy has ruled out the transfer of cash to other countries demanding slavery reparations.
Well, GB News national reporter Charlie Peters joins us now with this story. So Ed Vaizey spoke at this...
No, he did not speak at this conference. He didn't, and we shouldn't say that he did, and we should also stress that, as we understand it, Ed Vaizey wasn't aware of the conference, wasn't involved in any planning for it. As I understand it, possibly didn't know anything about any of these speakers either. But Lord Vaizey does play quite a critical role on this APPG because he is the sole Tory member. Now, in order to be an all-party parliamentary group, you have to have at least one member from the main opposition party. So, in effect, his membership, when he joined this group in August...
Remind us the name of the group.
African Reparations. It keeps it on the books. Without Lord Vaizey, there's no reparations parliamentary group. And that gives that seal of credibility towards the group and potentially its wider associations. So they had a conference last month on the 27th of October in central London. And I watched quite a lot of it. I didn't manage to go on the day. I was away from London at the time, but I did note it in my diary and made sure to catch up later. And there were some quite controversial remarks and speakers there. One of the speakers, we're going to play a clip for you in a moment, is Esther Koze. Now, she's actually the general coordinator of a group called Stop the Mangamizi, which is the co-secretariat of this APPG, so directly linked. Last year, we revealed that she was a part of a bizarre conspiracy where she claimed that Black Lives Matter was being funded by MI5 and the CIA as part of an agenda. All very confusing claims. But at the conference last month, she said that there was potentially a call for two different forms of law. One for white people, who she calls colonizers, and another for those of African descent. Let's have a listen.
We're going to go very far if we keep using our enslavers and colonizers' visions of law. OK? We have to restore our people's law as African people. And the two systems are there, already in operation.
Now, sat next to her on that panel was Belrabero Addy, the MP, a Labour MP, who is the chair and the lead organiser of this APPG. We also saw Diane Abbott speaking at this conference. But another speaker who was there, I think the most controversial of the lot, is Piaba Madokwe, who is a former MP from the Economic Freedom Fighters. Now, for our viewers and listeners who don't know, that is an extremely controversial South African political party. It was in government. It's a black nationalist and communist party. Its leader, Julius Malema, has in the past referred to how people in South Africa need to cut the throat of whiteness. He said that that was metaphorical. He's also said that the only white man you can trust is a dead white man. So I've heard from senior Tories, one of them a member of the shadow cabinet, telling me that Ed Vaizey's membership of this APPG, even if he's not directly involved, even if he hasn't attended meetings or been part of this conference, is unhelpful because he's giving credibility and parliamentary officialdom towards those organisers and giving those links to those controversial speakers. Lots of questions to answer here, and I'm surprised that it's taken this long for people to take a look at this group, actually, and ask, why are Labour MPs sitting on panels and associating with people from the EFF in South Africa who have such controversial statements and calls and are even considered controversial in South Africa, which is very different politics to our own.
Well, people might say that the ANC has become a little bit more radical in recent years, the African National Congress, but of course the EFF are far to the left of the ANC and battle against them, although have shared governmental positions. But Charlie, this idea that there are two versions of law in the United Kingdom. Yeah. I mean, and that we need to revert to African law in the UK. I mean, sorry, did white people colonise the UK? Is that what is trying to be put across there? I just don't follow the logic of any of those comments at all.
Well, we have seen a part of sort of the Pan-African political movements in Britain. I've been looking at these groups for a long time. I follow many of their offshoots and many of their lead commentators. I have often seen this rhetoric that those of African descent in Britain are the originals. They are the first people in Britain. Esther Koze herself, I saw her give a rally in Brixton last year, which I followed up on and made a report on for the channel last year. She said that we were the first ones. And Dawn Butler MP, last month, I revealed that she made a video which included some controversial black activists who'd been involved in violence. She also made similar remarks in that video. I should stress that I have tried to reach out to Esther Koze about that clip we played, and she did not respond to requests to clarify her remarks. But as you say, Tom, it does appear that she says that there's one rule of law, which is organised by enslavers and colonisers, to use her language, and another which is sort of African law, and we have the two systems operating already. She seems to infer. Some clarification on those remarks from Esther Koze, from the APPG and from the Labour MPs who give it support would be helpful. And I think there are also questions to answer for Lord Vaizey, who's giving that parliamentary credibility to this group and the speakers it's invited to a conference in central London.
Well, thank you, Charlie. It's very important that we know who's being platformed and what exactly they're saying. Some alarming statements there. Charlie Peters, our national reporter, thank you very much indeed for that exclusive.
Goodness me, I'm not sure I'd like to...
Bit worrying, isn't it?
Go to African law in the United Kingdom. It does remind me of, I think I saw...
Is there one African law?
I think I saw a Louis Theroux documentary once of the Black Panthers in New York who were trying to claim that Henry VIII was black and that all the sort of significant figures in history were black. It does sound like a very peculiar and particular conspiracy theory. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up in today's programme. Of course, in the United States, the voting is underway. Here are pictures from Michigan, where people are casting their ballots. I am always amazed and fascinated that they allow cameras into polling stations.
Great.
And you can see people vote as they vote live. It's happening, it's there. Goodness me, more of that, of course, later in the programme.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Osama bin Laden issued a fatwa entitled World Front for Combat Against Jews and Crusaders, and President George W. Bush talked of a crusade on terrorism. In 2010, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula sent a parcel bomb to New York. It was addressed to Reginald of Chatillon. The addressee had died at the hands of Saladin in 1187. Those facts suggest that the long history of struggle between Christendom and Islamic caliphates remains relevant, at least to some militant Islamists. That being the case, perhaps we should all understand the past. General Sir Simon Mayle, a former Deputy Chief of the Defence Staff Operations, can be our teacher, particularly if we want to know in gory detail about battles to control Jerusalem, Constantinople, Vienna and the Eastern Mediterranean. His new book is called The House of War. It's an excellent read, which perhaps ought to figure in a national adult curriculum. And he joins me. But let's begin with the word crusade. What was it that drove Christians around Europe to want to cross to the Holy Land and seize Jerusalem?
Context and timing is really important to understand. It's been rather stereotyped as Christian aggression against peace-loving Muslims. The Islamic religion had burst out of the desert in the 7th century with the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And for the next nearly 400 years, had Christianity, Christendom, the Christian states absolutely on the back foot. It took the Holy Land, destroyed the Persian Empire, took the North Africa, which was Christian at the time, including Egypt, of course, took Spain all the way into Tours, Charles Martel. 100 years after the death of the Prophet, it expanded in an extraordinary state.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 to 2, and remember, the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Bonfires and firework displays are set to take place this very evening to mark Guy Fawkes Night.
Apologies for that. Nice rendition. But in one area, they've been banned for 10 days in November under a new law. And that one area is in Scotland. And it's become a firework control zone following problems in the past with some antisocial behaviour. So now it's an arrestable offence to light a firework.
Goodness me, this seems a bit heavy-handed, but let's discuss it with the chair of the Scottish Police Federation, David Threadgold. David, thanks for joining us. Is this using a sledgehammer to crack a nut?
I don't think so. The introduction piece there referred to antisocial behaviour. What we have seen in Scotland, particularly in Niddrie area of Edinburgh and in certain areas around Dundee have been the weaponisation of fireworks, with a small number of members of the public intent on, injuring, creating really quite significant disturbances and targeting police officers and other emergency service workers at this time of year.
So
that is an unacceptable course of action for these people. And specifically in respect to the fireworks control zones, there is a mitigation that can be used, as you've said, to and basically criminalise the possession of fireworks at these particular times. My view is that there is definitely a place for this in the wider sort of fireworks piece, where we're looking for families to go and enjoy bonfire nights and fireworks displays safely. But the impact on the police, I think, is slightly less than might be expected, considering only 4 of these fireworks control zones in place across the whole of Scotland.
So you're not allowed to set off a firework in your garden then?
There are different levels of fireworks, so the lowest level, sprinklers, that type of thing. It's not a criminal offence to use those in your gardens, but if the firework control zone is in place, and again, it's not just for public properties. It could be that there's one in place near a cat and dog home, for example, to prevent animals being traumatised. But in the simplest terms, it does criminalise the use of certain types of fireworks within your home address potentially.
David, I suppose one of the risks here is that those who would do ill with fireworks, those who would break the law by firing fireworks at police officers and all the rest of these ghastly things you're describing, will they pay attention to a fireworks exclusion zone? Isn't it already illegal to fire a firework at someone?
I absolutely agree with your point. Those who are intent on the type of behaviour that we have seen in the previous few years, although I'm very pleased to say to a much lesser extent this year, and I think that is largely due to a number of mitigations that the police have put in place, those people are not going to be in the slightest concerned about the existence of a fireworks control zone. But again, as I've said, it's part of the overall picture and trying to make sure that people enjoy themselves safely at this time of year.
David, we're going to have to leave it there. Your line was a little bit shaky at the end, but I think we got everything you had to say. Chair of the Scottish Police Federation, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you. I feel like it's a bit harsh on people who use their fireworks nicely.
Yeah, I think with all law and order issues, I come back to this point, it's always a small proportion of people doing a large proportion of crime. I find it very hard to sort of agree with measures that penalise the majority for something that a tiny minority of people are doing. Can't we just go after the baddies?
We always get punished, don't we? The good guys. The people who play the game by the rules.
It's like the National Gallery off Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
Because some twits throw soup at a painting, now there's airport-style security, and where before you could just walk in to look at the lovely paintings, people are queuing for hours now outside that gallery. It's ruined it for everyone.
Yeah, and just because people wanted to blow up planes, it means that we have to go through security for hours at the airport, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, don't like it.
Don't like it either. No. Why can't everyone just be good?
Yeah.
I ask you.
Just lock up the wrong uns.
Well,
this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come up on today's programme. Of course, the United States is voting today. Yes, polls begin to close from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. United States Eastern Time. That's in Kentucky and Indiana. That corresponds to 11 p.m. London time. We'll be starting to bring you results from 11 p.m. this evening. But before all of that, let's have a look at the weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most, it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east, with some clearer skies, we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. Will keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here. clear and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland, the rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more breaks in the cloud over northern England, North Wales compared to today. Better chance seeing a bit of sunshine. Again, the northeast of Scotland favoured for a bit of blue sky. And where we do see some sunshine, temperatures 15, 16 degrees, even where it's rather glum in the east. 12 or 13, so it is pretty mild. It's a very similar story on Thursday. Again, most places dry, a bit more wind. The wind's actually picking up tomorrow in the west and staying pretty breezy around western coasts on Thursday. Again, northern Scotland just poking out there with some sunshine, seeing temperatures into the mid or even high teens. Elsewhere, most places just dry and cloudy with temperatures 11 to 13 degrees.
We can expect clear.
You could win Christmas on us this year. There's cash, £20,025 in tax-free cash to make your new year go with a bang. There's also £5,000 to spend on all the gifts. We've also got Christmas lunch for you, with £500 in vouchers to spend at your favourite supermarket. And finally, a festive GB News goodie bag. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Court cases.
A presidential dropout.
Assassination attempts.
This has been a US election like no other.
And if the polls are correct, it's on a knife edge.
Stay up with us as the drama unfolds and America decides their next president.
We'll discuss what it means for them, for the world, and for our special relationship. America Decides, tonight from 11.
Only on GB News.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of November. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Election day. Our cousins across the pond today decide who the most powerful man or woman in the world will be for the next 4 years. Will it be a President Harris or President Trump? We'll follow the action and bring you all the results through the night here on GB News.
And back at home, Kemi Badenoch, she's assembled her shadow cabinet. There are places for Robert Jenrick, there are places for Priti Patel. Notably, there's no place for Suella Braverman or Tom Tugendhat.
And let's tackle a prince. That was the playful cry of South African children as they played rugby with Prince William in Cape Town. Of course, he's been there all week as he promotes his Global Earthshot Environmental Prize. Now, voting has been underway for a couple of hours now in the United States, and we'll start to get the results drip-feeding to us from about 11 p.m. this evening. That's when the first parts of Kentucky and Indiana will start reporting their votes.
Yes, let us know if you're going to be staying up all night, you're going to be glued to the television or your radio listening to GB News coverage with Stephen Dixon, Ellie Costello and this guy over here, Tom Harwood. You're going to be bringing all the geeky analysis, aren't you?
That's right. I've got my spreadsheets, I've got my key counties. We're going to know what the change is going to be in some of these areas, how it changes compared to 2020. That's going to tell us the story through the night. We're looking in Michigan right now where J.D. Vance, the vice presidential candidate of the Republican Party, Donald Trump's number 2, has just stepped out of his car there. We can see live pictures on our screen of J.D. Vance with, it looks like one of his children as well. He has 2 children. He's referenced them a lot during the campaign, his time as a father, how his life has changed, of course, since he got the nomination to become the vice presidential candidate, followed around by Secret Service, of course, all the time now. And you can see his family there as he is appearing today on Election Day.
Well, there you go. Live pictures of the big election day in the United States. Do get your thoughts coming in as well. What do you make of the whole contest? gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. But let's get to the headlines with Katie.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the newsroom. Some breaking news this lunchtime. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has withdrawn from her engagements this week, Buckingham Palace has announced. A statement from Buckingham Palace says Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection, for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. We'll keep you up to date when we have more on that. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what has been described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next president of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats, and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, and the first result has come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. Well, both Harris and Trump spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
While Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to you show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet. Chris Philp has been announced as Shadow Home Secretary, while Jesse Norman has been appointed Shadow Leader of the House. Notably, there's no role for Tom Tugendhat, who is a contender in the leadership race. Yesterday, Badenoch's former rival in the Tory leadership race, Robert Jenrick, accepted the role of Shadow Justice Secretary, while the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride, is the new Shadow Chancellor. And former Home Secretary Priti Patel has been appointed Shadow Foreign Secretary. The new co-chair of the Conservative Party, Nigel Huddleston, spoke to Eamon and Isabel earlier on.
It was very clear that she wanted to offer roles to all of her opponents because she has a great degree of respect for them. All of those who wish to serve and all of the names you mentioned, they are talents in the party, and one of the key things Kemi wants to do is unite the party and make sure that we draw in all the talents in terms of those serving in the shadow team.
Elsewhere, the tobacco and vapes bill will be introduced in Parliament today, and Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GBNews this morning that the government won't proceed with banning smoking in some outdoor hospitality venues for now. Labour wants to take tougher action to better protect the public, NHS and the economy from the harms of smoking. A ban may be imposed in playgrounds and outside schools. Wes Streeting told Eamon and Isabel there needs to be a balance between benefiting public health and any negatives on people's liberties or on people's livelihoods.
There's no doubt that the hospitality sector has really been through the mill in recent years. The impact of the pandemic, the challenges in the wider economy, the amount of money we've got spare in our pockets. And look, there aren't many advantages to leaks of government discussions, but one of the advantages of this leak was that it's meant we've been able to have a discussion with the hospitality sector. And based on the evidence on the upside risks and the arguments on the downside risks, we've chosen not to proceed with the outdoor hospitality proposal at this time.
And finally, for now, the Prince of Wales has met South Africa's president today during his week of engagements in South Africa. William's audience with President Cyril Ramaphosa has been described as a follow-up to the state visit made to the UK by Mr Ramaphosa in 2022. Prince William is in Cape Town ahead of the award ceremony for his Earthshot Prize tomorrow. This morning, the Prince met with young conservationists at a viewpoint to Table Mountain. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 2 and polls are open as America votes for their very next president. Will it be Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Well, both candidates made their final pitches in the crucial swing state of Pennsylvania.
Tomorrow is election day. Tomorrow is election day. And the momentum is on our side.
We're just one day away. Oh, we've been waiting for this. I've been waiting 4 years for this.
It's just so different from how we do it over here, isn't it?
Very different.
Just the way they speak, the way they, these massive slogans, the placards, the rallies.
Yeah, it's...
the insults.
Much more showbiz, to some extent.
Yeah.
But there is data behind all of this glitz and glamour as well. Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump by 4%, according to the latest poll. But, health warning on that, it's not about the popular vote who actually gets to win the contest. It's, of course, about winning that all-crucial electoral college.
Yeah, and there was some interesting data around the turnout for registered Republicans. That's been a bit higher than for registered Democrats in early voting in a majority of states. So there's a little bit of an indicator there as well.
But joining us now is the Professor of International Politics at Birmingham University, Professor David Dunn. David, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Is it fair to say this election really is on a knife edge?
More than any election in our lifetimes, this is really too close to call. It goes back and forward in those crucial 7 swing states, and it really comes down to the margin of error. It really comes down to actually how good those polls are, and those polls are probably unreliable. They sample about 2% of the population and try and adjust it for all the different demographic elements to it, and actually they haven't got a great track record. So I wouldn't put any money on this race if I had to.
And the demographics are so complicated, aren't they? I mean, we're hearing that Kamala Harris is way ahead with women, but Donald Trump picking up a lot of male votes. And then when you go to ethnicity and race and religion and all of that, it gets even more complicated. I mean, America's top pollster, Nate Silver, he said it's tighter than a coin flip.
I think that's right. But what it also shows, I think, is the way in which elections have changed in the new media age. It used to be that the candidates would appeal to the entire population and would track to the middle to try and attract the floating voters. What we have now, partly because the way in which people can reach voters through different forms of media, is they target different demographic groups, Latinos or young black men or older white men without college degrees or older women or whatever it might be. So you have a fragmented message through a fragmented system of reaching them, and that makes it very difficult to call the race because we've got no idea how they all come together in the final analysis. We'll only find it out possibly tomorrow, possibly the end of the week, possibly before we get to Christmas.
Goodness me, you're injecting fear into my spine there, Professor David Dunn, when you mentioned this might not all be wrapped up tonight. Of course, in 2016, we knew before 6 a.m. London time in 2016 that Donald Trump had won. Hillary Clinton conceded. But in 2020, it took many, many days. If you had a hunch, will we know on the night tonight, or might it take a little bit longer?
I think that we may have an indication of the way that the presidency is going to go, but of course that there's the House and the Senate as well. The House and the Senate will take much longer. California is dreadfully slow in the way they count, so the House won't be known for certain by till the weekend. But I suspect these polls may actually not give us the full picture, and we may get a break one way or the other. Which way it is, we don't know. But it could go on, as you say. In 2000, I remember it well. It went to the 9th of December before we had a final resolution because of the controversy in Florida. Your viewers may remember the hanging chads and all that went with that. So it's really impossible to tell us when we get a result, as well as what that result will be.
Well, hopefully it won't go on for days and days and days, because we've got a fantastic programme tonight from 11 o'clock until 6 a.m. and I want to make sure that as many GB News viewers and listeners are watching and listening as possible.
But of course, David, we will start to learn these crucial indicators tonight. We'll start getting the eastern portions of Kentucky and Indiana reporting from about 11 p.m. our time. From 12, we'll get Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Vermont, Virginia. Can you just explain how the Americans do this in a very different way to the Brits? Here we wait for the constituencies to be counted and then declare the result once we know the winner. In the United States, it's rather different.
So what they do is they count the votes in batch, and they actually say, OK, up to this point, this is the result that we have. So you get a running commentary, effectively. It's partly because they can, in some states, it's done electronically. I mean, some states you vote by touching a touch screen, others by putting it in a machine and it counts it immediately electronically. So the results are there very rapidly, and they do release those results as they go along. Of course, it varies hugely from state to state, and it varies also in terms of the way they vote. They count postal votes and indeed armed forces votes that come in often fairly late in the day. But you get an idea of the trend by virtue of the fact that you do get those results as you're going along as part of the counting process. And then, of course, we have the 5 time zones of America. That means that actually some states are still voting when those results are released.
Yes, very often we likely know the results by the time that Hawaii gets to declare, but that's a fairly safe democratic bet these days. Just tell us a little bit about Pennsylvania. This is the state that everyone is looking at, perhaps with the most interest.
Yeah, so Pennsylvania is the biggest prize. Of the 7 states, Pennsylvania has 19 electoral college votes, which is a lot more than many of them. So Nevada, for example, is just 6. Michigan is 15. So the one to win is Pennsylvania, and it's sort of seen as a bellwether state, and it's crucial to different routes to the presidency. There are a whole variety of different packages of these 7 states.
David, I'm just going to interrupt you here because we can see J.D. Vance there in Ohio. He's just been to vote. Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, senator for Ohio, of course. It looks like he's just walked in there to that polling centre. I wonder if he's going to walk up to the camera and say anything. Let's have a listen.
Okay.
I, of course, voted for Donald Trump and myself. So did my wife, and we also, for all the locals out there, we voted for Bernie Moreno for the United States Senate. And if you want the policies of Donald J. Trump in the United States Senate, then Bernie Moreno is the only candidate in this race who I think is the candidate of peace and prosperity for the United States Senate. So I hope people will get President Trump over the finish line. I hope people here in Ohio will get Bernie Moreno over the finish line. Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio. So I appreciate you guys being here. Happy to take a few questions. You obviously can see my kids bouncing around here. There's Usha. And, we'll take a few questions, but we're going to hit the road, go back home, and then head off to Palm Beach.
Senator, regardless of the results tonight, half the country probably won't be satisfied with the results.
Sure.
What's your message to them, potentially your supporters, if it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to?
Well, look, I think our message is, first of all, we do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well as we can, create as much prosperity as we can for the American people, and remind our fellow Americans that we are all fundamentally on the same team, however we voted. I certainly hope you vote for Donald J. Trump today. I think that his policies are going to promote peace and prosperity for our citizens, but if you vote the wrong way, in my view, I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to treat you as a fellow citizen, and if I am lucky enough to be your vice president, I'm going to fight hard for your dreams and for your family over the next 4 years.
Senator, do you have an opinion on who will fill your Senate seat if you win?
No, look, I'm way too superstitious to think about those things. Let's get this election over the finish line. Let's make Donald J. Trump the president-elect, and then we'll worry about what happens afterwards. No, actually, he called me about 3 in the morning, apparently from the plane headed from Michigan to Palm Beach last night. I was in bed at the time. I haven't been able to talk to him this morning. I was going to call him as soon as I woke up, but when I realized that he got back home around 5:30 last night, I decided hopefully he's asleep, and so I'm not going to call him. I'll certainly talk to him probably on the way to the airport or when we land.
Senator, you grew up 20 miles away, Middletown. Now you're standing here. Maybe in a few hours you'll be the next vice president.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that in that moment? Here to here, and possibly second in command.
Look, it's an amazing thing. My heart is just overwhelmed with gratitude to the generosity of the American people. The fact that I'm standing here is very much a testament to the fact that we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. The fact that I have a beautiful wife and 3 beautiful kids is more importantly a testament to the fact that we live in the greatest country in the world. So I think that what today represents is an opportunity to pay down a debt that I owe to this country. And if I am the vice president, I'm going to work as hard as I can to pay down that debt. I don't think I'll ever be able to return what this country has given to me, but I'm going to try, but we have to win first.
Sir.
You know, my most important message is we ought to argue, disagree about, persuade each other about politics. That's part of the natural process. But we can't discard friends and we can't discard family members. I think that if we all just recognize this basic principle, that we ought to love people, we ought to be friends with people, we ought to be family members with people, regardless of their politics, that would do a lot to heal the division. I know myself, I've had a lot of friends, not a lot, I've had a few friends who have cast their friendship aside because I decided that I wanted Donald J. Trump to be the winner in the last election and in this election. I think that's a tragedy, and I'm not going to follow that example. I'd say to everybody, whether you're voting for Donald Trump or voting for Kamala Harris, remember, friends and family, that stuff is what really, really matters. We ought to be kind to one another. We ought to treat each other with respect. And fundamentally, what we're trying to do, President Trump and I, is just build the kind of country where our fellow Americans can achieve their dreams. But that's all of our fellow Americans, regardless of who they vote for. We'll take one more question.
Senator.
No, I'm not too worried about that. Look, one outlier poll doesn't change what we've seen on the ground. We feel very good about the energy. We feel very good about the early vote. But ultimately, the ball is in the courts of the American people. Today is the day. If you don't want an open border, vote for Donald Trump. If you want to get back to low inflation and affordable groceries, vote for Donald Trump. If you want to return the world to peace and stability, vote for Donald Trump. That's my pitch to voters. I really do believe that we can have a golden age of prosperity in the United States of America, but voters are going to ultimately make that choice. I don't worry about any one poll. I think that we're going to win. I really do, but ultimately the voters make that decision. We'll see what they think about this by the end of the day, hopefully. God bless you guys. Thank you. You ready?
We have it. We've been listening to Donald Trump's vice presidential pick, his nominee, J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, voting in Ohio. And there he is with one of his 3 children there, who he's referenced repeatedly throughout the course of this campaign, really emphasising those messages of peace, prosperity and family. But Professor David Dunn is still with us, listening to that impromptu press conference there. What did you make of it, David?
I thought it was a very generous summing up of the situation in an attempt to actually celebrate the democratic process, in contrast to his running mate, of course, who doesn't always do that. I thought it was also interesting, actually, to see the Secret Service in short sleeves. Clearly, they're having a very mild November, so that probably contributes to a big turnout if the weather is pleasant. I mean, we've seen previous elections where they've been all huddled up against the snow. Ohio's not necessarily in the south of the country, so actually they're clearly having a bit of good weather there that contributes to that sense of that this is going to be a record turnout of voting.
On that point, it tends to be good weather that helps the lower information voters, the voters that are less likely to be usually involved in the democratic process. That could help Mr. Donald Trump.
It could well indeed, but we just don't know who's going to turn up on this one. Actually, there's been all sorts of indications that, as you say, that more registered Republicans have been coming out. But by the same token, there's also, as we discussed the other day, Tom, the greater numbers of female voters coming out, which may benefit Harris. So we don't know until these things are tallied. It's tantalising, it's exciting, it's a meet and drink for nerds like me and you. But actually, we won't know until tomorrow or thereafter.
Such a different way of talking between J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. Donald Trump, very combative. J.D. Vance, I mean, some of those things could make someone shed a tear, you know, family and friends. You don't want to lose them over politics. Everyone should, you know, have respect for each other, respect the democratic process. We're all Americans. I mean, it is heartwarming. It is, David.
It's heartwarming, but it's also deliberate. He is thinking of the post-Trump world. Whatever way it goes, whether Trump wins in there for 4 years or whether Trump's moment will pass, we'll find out in the coming hours. But thereafter, Vance, who is much younger, is thinking about his political future. And that was very much a note, not just celebrating the democratic process, but celebrating his place in that as a unifying character. He has ambitions, he has talents, he's one to watch.
Yeah.
And just finally, Professor David Dunn, we also heard J.D. Vance talk there about the senatorial candidate in Ohio. Yeah. It's easy to forget amongst the glitz and the glamour of the presidential race. A third of Senate seats are also up, and every seat in the House of Representatives as well. Is the Ohio Senate seat currently Republican, I believe, at risk?
Yes, I mean, in fact, actually, what's likely to happen is that the Senate will go from Democratic control to Republican control. How much of a swing there is open to question. But he is very much reminding people that this is not just a presidential thing, because who gets the keys to the White House and how they can govern will be determined by the other two branches of government. And the Senate in Republican control would really hamper Harris's presidency, and similarly, if Donald Trump won and the Democrats won the House, that would limit his capacity to govern with a free-for-all if that were the case. So if we do get a divided government, that will be a constraint on whoever's in the White House. If the candidate, the party, has a clean sweep and gets all three branches, then their ability to govern unrestrained is at their feet. So the other aspects of this Democratic event today are very much consequential to the overall situation of where America goes from here.
Thank you very much, Professor David Dunham, for being so flexible with that little impromptu press conference there by J.D. Vance. Thank you very much. You're a Professor of International Politics at Birmingham University.
Well, plenty more to come here on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon. Not only are we going to be looking at more of these extraordinary live pictures as voting takes place in the United States, we're going to be back home in Blighty too, because there's plenty going on here.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
But it turns out there's a growing number of grandparents who are now taking up the hobby.
And not all of them are male. 7 million gamers are aged over 50, 7 million of them. And we're going to introduce you to one this morning. Her name's Kath Bowie. She's 76 years of age, and Kath has become a worldwide star of the game Fortnite. Good to see you, Kath.
Hello, good morning to both of you.
Morning.
And tell me this, Kath, is Bowie your real name?
Bowie. Yeah.
Bowie.
Yes, it is my real name, yes.
And you do it a Bowie and not a Bowie?
It's a Bowie, yes, definitely Bowie, yes.
Bowie or Bowie?
Bowie.
Bowie.
But that's not what the Jim Bowie was called, or Jim Bowie was called in the Alamo. He was a Bowie.
No, but that's what I'm called, Kath Bowie.
Oh, she's their own superstar.
You are your own superstar. You are indeed. Well, so we're led to believe, Kath, that there's nobody else like you, or very few people like you, but there is. There is lots of people your age, your stage, doing what you do.
Yes, there's not a lot that streams. Okay, Fortnite, but there's definitely plenty that plays. Any game, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be Fortnite. It can be any game.
So Kath, how did you get started in all of this?
Oh yeah, well, it's 7 years ago actually. I walked into my teenage grandson's bedroom and just saw him playing what I now know, of course, and what I play is Fortnite. And that was the very first week that Epic had released it. And it was just really love at first sight.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 2. Now, the Prime Minister has said he'll seek a renegotiation of the UK's Brexit deal with Brussels in a bid to tackle the small boats crisis.
OK, yes. So Sir Keir Starmer wants to reinstate the UK's ability to lead investigations into people trafficking on the continent.
It all opens the prospect of a major change to Britain's relationship with the EU, raising key questions about what Brussels can expect in return.
So for more on this, we're joined by International Security and Border Control expert Henry Bolton, OBE. Henry, is Keir Starmer using the issue of immigration and border control to get closer to the European Union?
Yeah, I think he is, Emily. Look, there's two things about this. First of all, if he should be successful in creating some sort of arrangement with the Europeans to enable the UK to lead investigations within the European Union, would it have an effect on the small boats? And the answer is pretty fundamentally no, it would not, because there is a whole lot of dynamics in relation to the freedom of movement area within the European Union that makes it very, very difficult, once those people reach the EU, to deal with the fact that they are there. There's a whole piece on the EU's approach to asylum and immigration that needs to be addressed. What needs to happen, the only sort of thing of that ilk that will make a difference, is disrupting the organised crime that is encouraging and facilitating that movement to Europe. So you need to project beyond the European Union, and the UK already has the means to lead those sort of investigations, but they're not even thinking about it because it's outside the experienced sort of domain of British police forces and law enforcement officials. So there's a fundamental problem there. So no, it won't work. So the second thing is, if it's not going to work, why is he doing this? Well, I think, as you suggest, or your words suggest, that actually he is using this as a vehicle to get closer to the European Union, to create a closer integration within the whole justice and rule of law arena with Brussels. So that's where I think we are on this. I have no difficulty, I should add, at all. In fact, I'm entirely supportive of close working relationships with our colleagues over the other side of the channel, whether they be in France or anywhere else in the European Union. Of course, exchanging intelligence and so on, and law enforcement information is a useful thing to do. But we do not need to have any other agreement other than the ones that we've already got in place to do that.
Of course, Keir Starmer has spoken repeatedly about Europol. He's spoken repeatedly about automatic information sharing, which admittedly used to happen when Britain was a member of the European Union, but does not happen now. Could it be that there will be an innocuous agreement where both sides just agree to share data on wrong-uns who happen to be in their country?
Yeah, indeed. And a lot of that data is already accessible. It's just that our border regime is not set up to manage it. I mean, it's a lot. One of the problems that I've got with the previous government, and going back to Boris Johnson and so on, is that, and Theresa May, is that the whole thing with regards to Brexit, we didn't have a plan. As to what, we were leaving the European Union, but what then? The whole of the European Union, every member state and the European Commission brought in the best and the brightest minds from public and private sectors to work out what the risks were of Brexit and to then manage those and come up with plans. The one country involved in Brexit that had a non-existent plan was the UK. And part of that, we're paying part of the price there. But how we address it now, you're right. The closer relationship we have, the better the information exchange, the better. But I was former chief planner for common security and defence policy in Brussels during that period. And I can tell you with absolutely no doubt that Brussels doesn't agree to anything unless it's to their advantage to agree it.
And that's the thing.
Question.
What's the trade-off?
What's Brussels going to want?
Yeah, exactly. Henry Bolton, thank you very much indeed. Thanks for coming on the show. Good to see you as well. Now, this is, of course, Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Yes, the people of America, the people of the United States of America are hitting the polls today. We've got some live shots here from, guess where? It's a roulette. Where are we now? There's a busy voting hall there, polling station there. And we're still waiting to find out where.
It's
Michigan!
One of the crucial swing states there. Michigan went, of course, for Joe Biden last time and Trump the time before. Which way will it go there? Well, it's being decided in rooms like this one across the United States.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your latest headlines from the newsroom. Some breaking news this afternoon. The Queen is unwell with a chest infection and has withdrawn from her engagements this week, Buckingham Palace has announced. A statement from the palace says Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has therefore had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. She apologises to all those who may be inconvenienced or disappointed as a result. And moments ago, Sir Keir Starmer has posted on X saying, on behalf of the whole country, I wish Her Majesty the Queen a speedy recovery. The Duchess of Gloucester has stepped in on the Queen's behalf to attend the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey on Thursday. We'll bring you more on that as we have it. Americans are heading to the polls across the country today to decide their 47th president in what is being described as a historically close race. As well as choosing who will be the next resident of the White House, Americans will also be electing 435 members of the House of Representatives, 34 Senate seats, and 11 state governors. Polling stations have now opened in several states, and moments ago, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance has cast his vote. The first result has also come in from the small town of Dixville Notch in New Hampshire, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have tied with 3 votes each. While both Harris and Trump have spent their final day campaigning in swing states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. Here's what Kamala Harris had to say in Pennsylvania.
We will win. And we will win. We will win. And we will win because when you know what you stand for, you know what to fight for.
While Donald Trump spoke to his supporters in Michigan.
But I think we're in very good shape. We just have to show up and you're going to have the biggest victory. You know what this will be? The single greatest victory, politically speaking, in the history of our country.
Back at home, Kemi Badenoch has held her first shadow cabinet meeting today, saying she will win back the trust of the public with a team effort as she released her full shadow cabinet. Chris Philp has been announced as shadow home secretary, while Jessie Norman has been appointed shadow leader of the House. Notably, there is no role for Tom Tugendhat, who is a contender in the leadership race. Other appointments include Badenoch's former rival Robert Jenrick as shadow justice secretary, Mel Stride as the new shadow chancellor, and Priti Patel as shadow foreign secretary. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from the newsroom in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello again. Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It's more of the same for most. Today it's dry but grey. There are a few breaks in the cloud, a few more places perhaps compared to yesterday seeing sunny spells. The high pressure that's dominating our weather is just drifting away, but the weather fronts are still way out to the west. We've got the breeze coming up from the south, but it's a pretty light wind and it's still bringing in a lot of cloud. We've seen a few breaks in the cloud already and a few more likely across parts of eastern England this afternoon. Northern Scotland also doing okay for sunshine. Pretty good looking day actually for the Great Glen up towards Orkney. Some spots of rain in Shetland, bit of drizzly rain too for Northern Ireland this afternoon. But elsewhere, as I said, most places dry. Quite misty, quite murky, but temperatures around or actually a touch above average, particularly in the west, 14, 15 degrees. Clearer skies across parts of the southeast and generally across eastern England could allow some fog to form overnight. Further west, it's just going to be quite grey through this evening, a bit misty on some hills. As I said, a bit of rain for Northern Ireland in the east initially, and then a few showers coming into the west. Some of that rain then working into southwest Scotland this evening, but again, it should be pretty light. Much of the northeast of Scotland dry and clear. And that's where we'll see the lowest temperatures as we go through the night. Still some drizzly rain across parts of Shetland. And through the night, the winds will pick up across western Scotland with a bit more rain just coming in here. Again, nothing too heavy. Most of England, Wales, Northern Ireland having a dry night. Misty, murky conditions over hills. And as I said, some thicker fog patches are possible over parts of eastern England, particularly after bonfires tonight. Temperatures could dip down to single figures, but many towns and cities staying in double digits. Another pretty mild start to Wednesday. And guess what? Tomorrow, another mostly cloudy but mostly dry day. A bit more in the way of showery rain over northwest Scotland initially, some showers in southern Scotland, maybe a bit more brightness tomorrow for North Wales and northern England, and again parts of northern Scotland doing okay for sunshine. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, hello to you, I'm Jules Buckley. Some queues on the northbound M1 continue from the M18 up to Sheffield, that's junction 32 up to 33 at Kedishameen, still queuing and a lane closure in place. And for the same reason, a lane shut southbound for the M66, an accident just around the turnoff for Ramsbottom junction 1, causing some delays as well. Quite busy on the northbound side too. Queues westbound for the M4 in Wiltshire at Swindon West at junction 16, though a lane shut there on the entry slip. There's been a multi-vehicle collision causing queues on the main carriageway westbound and the M4 as well there. And lane 1 of 4 still coned off on the clockwise M25. It's just before Watford at 19. There's a broken down lorry causing delays back to Maple Cross at junction 17. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 20 to 3, and there's so much more to come up on today's programme, squeezing into the final 20 minutes. But of course, after that, it's Martin Daubney, and he's here to tell us what's up on his programme. Martin, what's up?
Great show, guys. Gotta say, I'm very much looking forward to spending the night with you tonight, Tom. Words I thought would never pass my lips. But of course, it's all about the greatest political show on earth. All eyes on America. Great coverage all the way until you're through the night extravaganza. Can anybody stop the Trump train? The markets are surging pro-Trump. The swing states look to be in his favour. Could we see the greatest political comeback of all time? Also, are we heading for Farmageddon. The president of the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, he went in with the Environment Secretary yesterday. He'll join me live on the show to spill the beans. What happened in that crunch meeting? Are we heading for farmer strikes, protests, and even food shortages? Next up, Ben Habib will join me on the show. Yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer said he wants closer ties with Interpol. Emily, you saw this coming earlier on. You were dead right. This means closer ties with the European Union on data. That will come at a price. Are we walking into a trap of Starmer's own making? And what about going above and beyond the call of duty? Two restaurants in Bibbington, near Sheffield, a father and son team are giving free food for the entire week to all armed forces veterans to celebrate remembrance. I think they deserve a medal for their patriotic services to the country. They'll join me on the show 3 till 6.
Oh, that's a lovely story to end the show with. Oh, really nice.
Very nice, but also fantastically perceptive about financial markets. We knew that in the run-up to the EU referendum, there were some private polls done by big hedge funds. I wonder if some of the big hedge funds in Manhattan might have done some private polling, and that's moving some money. Who knows? All to play for. Martin Daubney, looking forward to your programme up at 3.
Yeah, who knows best? The markets, the betting shops, or the polls?
Definitely not the betting shops.
Not the betting shops.
Definitely.
Do they always get it wrong?
The betting shops is just what people put money on.
I know, but still, people are smart as a collective, no?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, well, scratch that
the
one.
Betting shops are downstream of polls, and then they can be massively swung by just one rich person putting a lot of money on one candidate, and then suddenly the odds shift.
I don't know, because millions of people will have betted, millions. Anyway, so markets, financial markets.
I think financial markets, because there'll be private data that they base that off.
Yeah, lots of smart people.
And polls are public data that we can see. Data.
Yes, and sometimes polls seem to have an agenda. Sometimes they're not always, even Stephen, some are very small groups of people, aren't they?
Although, I mean, you'd be a dumb polling company to deliberately get it wrong, because then no one would book you again. No one would use your services. I don't know. We'll find out tonight, hopefully. Yes. Or in the early hours of the morning. Well, let's move on to something slightly different now, because swearing at work is more common in the north, says a judge who ruled a driver's dismissal too harsh despite him aiming expletives at a work colleague.
Yeah, so apparently it's all right to swear in the office up north because that's just what northerners do. Well, the delivery driver was sacked after making offensive comments about a co-worker's weight, but the judge's comments have raised the wider question as to whether professional profanity should be expected in the workplace.
Well, we're joined now by the owner of the Sandon pub, Kate Stewart. Kate, do you often hear profanity in your workplace?
Every day, and they come out of my mouth quite a lot as well. So I am a northern girl. I'm from a council estate. That's how I was brought up. We swear, we really do. Is it right? Maybe not, but it's what we do. And it's the context it's taken in as well. This gentleman has made a comment to this lady, and the word that he said, the M word in particular, has got a different meaning up north. It doesn't mean it's derogatory towards a certain kind of person. When we were growing up, it just meant silly. I'll give you another example. Northerners say the word minty. We say things are minty, and that means it's dirty, it's disgusting. We do say different words, so it can be taken out of context as well. But I'm a swearer. I hold my hand up.
I mean, Kate, do you think this judge is playing into stereotypes, though? Do you think northerners do swear more? Do you think that's true or not?
Do you know what? I think we do swear a little bit more. I will say that and hold my hands up and admit it, yeah. And I do have swearing at my workplace as well. My employees swear at me. We work in a bar as well, so we've got banter with the customers, and we'll say, oh, he's pees us off or whatever, and we do that, but it's never said in aggression. It's never said in a derogatory way. We'd never have anybody insult us. We're very family orientated, and I feel like so much pressure's being put on employers all the time. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you've got to watch this. How are we supposed to conduct our business? If someone stubs the toe and work, and we've got this policy that they can't swear, someone stubs the toe and does swear, what am I supposed to do? Sack them, right? Oh God, you said the F word, get out the door. It's so much pressure. Yorkshire. Leave us alone.
Do I need to stand up for southern swearers here? Because I've brushed shoulders with the sort of Fleet Street greats of old.
Have you now?
Of the 70s and 80s. You know, people who were junior then would tell me that, you know, these great newspapers the newsroom would be run on swearing, people yelling at each other. I mean, something when news happens, that's sort of the environment there. I mean, it can't. I struggle to think that there is really this north-south divide when it comes. Maybe Southerners just like to pretend that they don't, whereas Northerners are more truthful about it.
Yeah, maybe it's that, Kate, that they're just pretending. Yes, there are a lot of southern, posho, foul-mouthed people around. Kate, thank you very much indeed for joining us and having a sense of humour. Kate Stewart, owner of the Sandon pub. Good stuff. Yes, although I would say, does Patrick, now he's from around the Manchester area, does he swear more than me? Probably. Probably. Although, you know, when I'm on a roll, who knows?
Well, to be fair, I haven't heard you swear in the news.
We almost heard you swear, didn't we?
Oh, once upon a time, but we'll leave that there. Much more to come on Good Afternoon Britain this afternoon. The United States is, of course, voting as we speak. Live scenes here of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, another one of those crucial Rust Belt swing states where, I hope we're not looking at what's written on that lady's ballot.
Oh, let's have a look.
That's goodness me. This is why cameras aren't allowed in British polling stations, because it could reveal how people vote. I mean, this seems a bit intrusive, really, to be broadcasting this on the television, but there you go.
Oh, I love it.
Votes
it's great.
being cast in the United States as we speak.
It's really happening.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This week is Chocolate Week, the ultimate celebration of everything rich, sweet and indulgent.
Yes, and we now have the best person in the studio with us to satisfy all of your chocolate cravings. We're joined now by master chocolatier Ollie the Choc. Ollie,
hello.
Really
Hey,
good to see you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And you brought some of your chocolate in with you.
I did. I brought some tasting
up.
samples. You're very welcome to help yourself.
So what have you got here? Tell us.
So this is my signature chocolate. I call it the Holy Grail. It's got sea salt flakes, crushed Oreo, caramel fudge pieces, very Moorish.
I love a caramel and salt combo, just, you know. I feel like you see it everywhere now. Look,
you won't be disappointed.
Look, I want everyone to see a close-up of this one. Can we get a shot on this one? So this is Oreo, there we are, caramel and salt. Do you want to try some?
You go first. Help yourselves. And then this bar of chocolate is a little bit of a wild card. That's a mystery flavour, so...
OK, I love a mystery.
I'm not going to tell you what that is.
Hold on this one. This one's amazing.
Are you?
Oreo, caramel.
That's my biggest seller.
I'll keep my palate clean for this. So this is a mystery flavour.
You've got to guess what that is.
Is that a nut in there, I see? Right, here we go. Ready?
I'm not saying anything.
Talk us through.
Very crunchy.
For me, I'm all about textures in chocolate.
Me too.
It has got a good crunch to it, hasn't it? It's not the kind of flavour that you would expect.
Oh, I can't get it.
Is it sweet? Is it salty?
Wait, no, it's salty, yeah.
It's salty.
Hang on, bit more.
OK.
Bit more.
I mean, just keep going.
Crisps? Wait,
It is crispy, it's crunchy. Could it be crisps?
I think it could be crisps. Yeah, it's crisps.
So what flavour?
Salt and vinegar. Cheese and onion.
Yes, nailed it. You know.
Oh, you're much better than me.
Love that.
Do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a cold, so my taste buds are
Oh, you're going to blame that, are you?
That's my excuse. That's delicious.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 to 3, and here's one for you. Have you heard of Moo Deng?
No, I haven't, Tom. Who is Moo Deng?
Moo Deng is the viral baby hippopotamus who shot to internet stardom earlier this year.
Is that her?
That's her on your screen now.
She's back on the scene, apparently, predicting who will be the winner of this US election. She was given the choice between two fruitcakes, one with Kamala Harris and one with Donald Trump. Oh, that's very funny, isn't it?
Absolutely. The name's written upon those fruitcakes, but Moo Deng ate the fruitcake that spelt out Trump.
Fruitcake, that's quite funny, isn't it?
Yes. But clearly, this means that we've got our hippopotamus prediction. We were talking about financial markets, about pollsters, even betting markets. Could it be the hippopotamus who actually predicts the right answer here?
I think it could be. I mean, it's 50-50, isn't it? But why shouldn't we, believe the hypnotic hippo who backs Donald Trump? I mean, you never know. Now, I was doing a little bit of research about other animals that have predicted things.
Yep.
So, yes, Paul the octopus, which you mentioned, which was the FIFA World Cup, yeah?
Yep.
But apparently Apple the tiger in Russia predicted the outcome of the 2018 presidential election. Presented with 2 pieces of meat, he selected Vladimir Putin.
Well, that one's easy. I'm sorry, I'm not giving it.
That's a pretty easy one, isn't it?
Well, here's Paul the octopus on screen now. People might remember Paul from 2010, where he correctly predicted game after game after game in that World Cup, match after match after match.
Yeah, I'm trying to find somewhere where there's a very fair election process. Yes, so Fritz the dog. Apparently, in the United States, a bulldog predicted several elections in local and national races. So this isn't the first we've heard of hypnotic animals.
But I suppose we don't really have a track record for Moo Deng, the baby hippopotamus, because Moo Deng is pretty new on the scene. Paul the octopus had a track record that we could trust, and I think many people did end up trusting Paul the octopus. However, Moo Deng, being so new on the scene, can we take her clear prediction there for Donald Trump's victory this evening particularly seriously? What do you reckon, Emily?
I think, we take a lot of people seriously when perhaps we shouldn't, so why not take this hippo seriously, eh?
Well, I mean, I suppose with this election, you might as well lick your finger and stick it up in the air and guess who's going to win. We've spoken to all the experts across this show. They don't agree on everything, but the one thing they do agree on...
What was it that Nate Silver said? It's as thin as a... It's as close as a flip of a coin, or what did he say?
Nate Silver, the psephologist extraordinaire in the United States, ran 80,000 simulations last night over the election, putting all the data and running these simulations. In 40,012 of them, Donald Trump won. Kamala Harris won, and in 39,988 of them, Donald Trump won. So, I mean, it's as close as 50-50 as you can possibly get. You might as well get a hippopotamus to eat a fruit salad to tell you what's going to happen, because that hippo will know just about as much as any expert tells you.
That's a Rizzler paper, isn't it? Less than, between those two figures. That's 24 in it.
Yeah, out of 80,000. So this is why people are really saying 50.
So if one family decides to stay at home, in a swing state, who knows?
These are live pictures here of people actually casting their votes. This will be an election that does come down to the wire. We're going to follow every twist and every turn of it, because it doesn't just affect the United States. The United States is the global hegemonic superpower, the one superpower.
Tell us what we can expect tonight.
Well, we're going to first get our initial results out of the eastern parts of Kentucky and Indiana from around 11 p.m. Then from 12, a dozen more states come in, but through the night we'll be drip-feeding information. We'll be making up that clear picture. Much to come, but of course Martin will take you through more of this antics after this.
nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. We'll keep a lot of cloud overnight, and tomorrow another fairly grey day, but although there'll be a lot of cloud around, most places will be dry and quite mild. Going to turn quite chilly this evening across northern Scotland. We've got some clearer skies here. Some breaks in the cloud elsewhere could allow some fog to form, and it's not completely dry. We'll see some drizzly rain at times this evening across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, and a bit more rain just coming into the far northwest as the winds pick up a little this evening here too. But for most it'll be dry, quite cloudy, and that will keep the temperatures up. A very mild night in the west. In the east with some clearer skies we could dip down to single figures, and we could, as I say, see some fog patches which may linger through Wednesday morning's rush hour across parts of northern Scotland. Will keep the clearer skies. So temperatures here through some sheltered glens may not be too far off freezing, but we should also see some brighter spells coming through. Western Scotland starting pretty drab but very mild. Same goes for Northern Ireland. Lots of cloud here, and say lots of cloud just generally everywhere. Thick cloud across the hills and mountains through England and Wales, and some fog patches across the southeast in particular, which may take most of the day to actually clear. So it's another pretty grey day. Some drizzly rain over southwest Scotland. The rain across northwest Scotland, that should clear. Maybe a few more breaks in the cloud over northern England, northwest